Chapter 271. Chapter 271, Overnight Epiphany. You just catch them all and swallow them up. This is the easiest way to naturally grasp knowledge. Yi Emo chuckled. He simply did not care the method, he just wanted for Yi Shiwen to get stronger as fast as possible. Even if Yi Shiwen was to skim through so many books, it was similar to scanning documents with a scanner and storing unprocessed data in his mind. This did not mean that he understood everything he read, but if he consumed these book demons, then he would immediately understand the essence of all the information, because these book demons themselves were nothing but the very embodiment of book's essence. This suggestion seemed very attractive to Yi Shiwen, but the same wasn't true for the little book demon standing next to him. To the terrified book demon, these two strangers seemed like ominous people with cruel motives. This was a world of books, and these book demons were basically the embodiment of school's martial art heritage. Yi Shiwen used soul search and instantly began to sweep through a book. Although for ordinary experts, there were going to be some disparities between merely reading a book and digesting the book's essence by digesting the book demon associated with that book. However, this wasn't an issue for Yi Shiwen. Of course, Yi Emo didn't know about Yi Zaiwen's secret, and that was why he made the suggestion of digesting the book demons instead of reading the books. Yi Zaiwen's soul search began to sweep through books and simultaneously began to gather a variety of information within his mind. At the same time, the mysterious space began to deconstruct the large inflow of information into bits of knowledge and transferred them to his mind for permanent storage. Yi Shiwen discovered that he did not need to consume a book demon to obtain its book's essence. With the help of soul search and mysterious space, he could quickly stock up knowledge, and that too in a considerably short amount of time. The stock of knowledge began to increase in his mind, and his cultivation level also began to increase, though very slowly. However, the influx of knowledge and information was constantly expanding his foundation. Yi Shiwen was pleasantly surprised to find out that his inner state was consolidating bit by bit, while at the same his understanding of this world was also improving bit by bit. This was also beginning to positively affect his cultivation, as he could clearly feel faint traces of improvement. Yi Shiwen finally understood why the ancients said, reading a book is like taking a walk on a 10,000 miles long road. He had to accept that he lacked enough experience about this world. And if by reading these books and gaining their essence, he could gather up experience and knowledge, then there was nothing that could stop him. Most of these books were ages old and contained the gist of insights and knowledge gathered by ancient experts through thorough research and hard work. But right now, Yi Shiwen was plundering their hard work so effortlessly. Yi Shiwen could see that the authors of these books must have also read books from the authors that came way before in time. In that way, these books were a continuation of ancient knowledge, passed down by many authors from different eras through their books. While he was absorbing the essence of the books, he felt as if he was actually experiencing the whole thing in real life. He could sense various sentiments and emotions surging within his heart. The more he went inside this world of books and absorbed their essence, the more he sensed a gradual change in his own temperament. He also noticed the presence of overgrown pride within himself, something he was unaware of all this time. He realized that his own breath, aura, was constantly changing, and there was now a recognizable presence of an emperor-level aura within his body. As he continued to gain knowledge, insights, and experience, he was basically gaining wisdom, and this was having a major effect on not just his personality or temperament, but also on his cultivation. The little book demon was staring at him with his eyes opened wide like those of a dead fish. Being a book demon himself, he certainly understood what was going on. He could clearly see how Yi Shiwen was so effortlessly reading books, using his soul search skill and absorbing those books' essence like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, his cultivation was also rising gradually as a result of that. In fact, even book demons did the exactly same thing. A book demon also needed to comprehend and then extract the essence of a book to enhance knowledge and cultivation, so it usually took a lot of time. Yi Shiwen was now simply like a humanoid book demon, But unlike other book demons, he was able to thoroughly understand the contents of countless books and absorb their essence, and that too to an extent of exaggeration when compared to other book demons and their slow comprehension speed. The little book demon was shocked. How could someone understand the essence of a book so easily, as if it was no more difficult than chopping vegetables? Most people did not succeed even after using soul search to obtain so much knowledge so fast. The little book demon was shocked by the scene unfolding in front of his eyes. It was basically impossible to digest such huge amounts of information so fast, and there were so many books in the library that a normal expert might have to take multiple rebirths in order to learn from all the books. But what Yi Shiwen was doing right now was simply unprecedented, and the result of that was right in front of the little demon's eyes, as he could see Zaiwen's aura changing constantly. This was bizarre and unscientific scene. Well, the little book demon would never know that this was all because of the mysterious space that was hidden in Yi Zaiwen's mind. It was like 1,000,000 times more efficient computing machine than the best supercomputer made on the Earth. Hence, Yi Shiwen's comprehension speed was off the charts, and he was basically reading an entire row of books from a large bookshelf with just one sweep of soul search. Although he still had to go through a lot of books, because there were countless bookshelves in this so-called small world of books, and his progress so far was insignificant. However, Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry, as he could feel his own cultivation level rising bit by bit. In fact, he could also feel the gaps in his previous knowledge being filled by the bits of information coming from these books. He felt like entering a profound world of knowledge where he could learn anything so long as he wanted to. Today, Yi Shiwen discovered that if the world of knowledge was like a sea, then his own possession of knowledge was nothing more than a drop so far. There was so much to learn that his blood was boiling with excitement in the anticipation of what might be the next new thing he was going to learn. Yi Shiwen knew that if he could comprehend all this knowledge, then he would certainly be able to advance to a realm of unfathomable proportions, though he would still need to accumulate huge amounts of energy to have breakthroughs in the process of reaching the realms above. However, this much knowledge and experience should be enough for a long period of time to help in upgrading his cultivation level. So long as he had sufficient stock of energy, he should be able to have multiple breakthroughs overnight. In other words, he was experiencing the famous overnight epiphany right now, since he was obtaining centuries worth of knowledge so quickly. The little book demon was flying next to him, but did not dare to disturb his comprehension process. At this time, Yi Mo was also on his side and concocting Ling Dan in order to keep Yi Zaiwen's comprehension uninterrupted at all times. He was also playing the part of Yi Zaiwen's bodyguard. The rise in Yi Zaiwen's cultivation was very fast, but this was useless without the support of massive amount of energy. Tianyuan Mirror was the only source of Ling Dan, and Yi Shiwen had consumed a lot of Ling Dan on the Demon Island. Since the consumption pace was high, so production pace must match, or at least outmatch the consumption pace in order to have a sustainable comprehension process. The situation was compelling Yi Mo to maintain a constant production of Ling Dan in order to avoid a lack of fuel for keeping the mysterious space running nonstop. Fortunately, however, Yi Mo had not been resting for the last more than half a year on the Demon Island. While Yi Shiwen was busy killing gods' descendants and absorbing divinity from their bodies, he also used their Naiden's demon cores for his cultivation enhancement. The flesh and blood of those demon beasts were all absorbed by Yi Mo to restore Tianyuan Mirror to the peak of Truth 9th stage. Yes, Tianyuan Mirror was at a higher level than Yi Shiwen right now. This was the reason why Yi Mo's speed of concocting Ling Dan had an unprecedented increase, enough to meet the consumption needs of Yi Shiwen. So this book is on the art of war and battle tactics. I never thought it to actually have so many hidden secrets. Yi Shiwen muttered while digesting the art of war and all sorts of tricks and tactics mentioned in the book. Now, even if he was suddenly asked to command a huge army of 1,000,000 soldiers, he would not find it troublesome. This was the benefit of having a full understanding of the art of war. Being a lone warrior who preferred being alone even during fights, This was a fairly unique concept. Yi Shiwen had to accept the fact that he had always been a brute who used sheer power over tactics to deal with his opponents. Now he was slowly changing bit by bit as he continued to read the books on various topics. After reading several books on military and war strategy, he comprehended the combined essence he gathered from them and suddenly felt a sublimation occurring in his temperament. He had started to understand the mindset of soldiers and generals better and better. He also gained a better understanding of how to manipulate people, both friends and foes, to do his bidding. Yi Zaiwen's aura was changing dramatically and gaining the characteristics of the imposing aura of a commander. If his friends would see him right now after the transformation, they would say that he no longer looked like an uninterested and unsocial teenager who mostly focused on cultivation and less provoked. Now he looked like an experienced commander who, if needed, could easily command soldiers at his fingertips. Of course, he was benefiting a lot by using this method, but his soul search was gathering too much information, and the time for processing was less in comparison since he needed to properly analyze the information and separate out the valuable knowledge. However, this was taking much more time since he had to process unnecessary and redundant information as well. It was said that truly invincible experts could achieve the so-called level of mastery where they could manipulate one world law to command 100 world laws at once, like the Demon Emperor who had never practiced sword martial techniques, but was still able to display unsurpassed sword skills. In fact, the Demon Emperor's sword intention attack was far superior to that of the old man whom Yi Shiwen met in the ruins, located at the bottom of the East China Sea. Yi Shiwen certainly had not reached that level of mastery yet, but he was using the method of analogy to comprehend tough concepts and ideas. He was basically using practical examples to understand complex concepts. Yi Shiwen used the same method of comprehension by analogy to thoroughly comprehend the art of war. That was why he was able to easily understand the same military concepts when dealt in several other military books. Yi Shiwen was fascinated as his self-confidence was building up naturally. He continued to move forward little by little while gathering knowledge. There were some travel notes, miscellanies, personal letters, and books that were covered in thick layer of dust. Apparently, no one had opened them in a long time. Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh with emotion as he could clearly see that the authors must have been true sages and legends to have compiled such hard-to-obtain knowledge in these long-forgotten books. However, even if most of this section of knowledge was valuable but not of immediate use to him, of course, like others, he would also not waste valuable time and resources in obtaining this kind of knowledge, but he still read them and stored unprocessed data in the mysterious space for future use. To be continued. Chapter 272. Chapter 272. Devil Art's power technique. Yi Zaiwen's inner state was naturally not going to be same after the crazy absorption spree. Slowly, Yi Zaiwen's aura began to transform from that of a soldier to a general, then to a king, emperor, and moving closer to that of a sophist. This was a natural outcome since he was absorbing the knowledge of a lot of people. For example, unrivaled, profound scholars, Zen Buddhists, Taoist experts, etc., all of them with distinct features and expertise in various fields, and since each of them had reached the heavenly level of understanding in their respective fields of expertise, Yi Shiwen had to benefit accordingly by gaining essences of miscellaneous knowledge. He was just like a gluttonous person who was using mysterious space to devour knowledge and gaining from that. He was slowly approaching the level of understanding of a sophist. He was very much enjoying this whole mass study session. He was slowly walking inside while reading all the books in his path. He would sometimes come across two very different perspectives to the same idea. Then he would sit cross-legged on the ground to ponder about the newly obtained contradicting ideas to find out the correct one. For example, life or death, which one is eternal? One must plan ahead for unforeseen problems, or one should not give in to groundless fears. Which one is correct? There were a lot of confusing and contradictory concepts in this world, and Yi Shiwen needed to choose which perspective he wanted to follow. NT, Wei Yuchomo, before it rains, bind around with silk, idiom, from Book of Songs, to plan ahead, to prepare for a rainy day Chi Rinyo Tien. Man of Kai fears the sky falling idiom. Groundless fears. Who is this insolent person that dares to peep at my kingdom? As soon as Yi Shiwen sent his soul search into a royal Tao book, suddenly a huge ghostly figure emerged from it. It looked like the ghost of a majestic emperor. Yi Shiwen could see traces of uprightness and elegance, however. Its cold eyes were glaring at him. Yi Shiwen noticed from the author's name inscribed on the book that the author used to be a great emperor of some ancient dynasty that ruled Great Yu State in the past. So, the ghostly figure apparently belonged to that emperor. A mere book demon like you thinks of himself as the master of this book's world? I suggest you open your eyes and see that your book is in my hand. The source of your very existence is in my grasp. I guess that should be enough to tell who is the boss here. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, after surviving the baptism of the demon emperor's imposing aura, now the imposing aura of no other emperor could have any effect on Yi Shiwen. How dare you? The ghostly figure shouted and flew towards Yi Shiwen. It suddenly used royal fist technique to throw consecutive punches at him, summoning forth a tornado of enormous and powerful dragon chi. The emperor must have been at a profound realm when he was alive. No wonder his ghost was so powerful in the form of a small book demon. According to the history records, the Great Yu State had reached the peak of governance and dominance and had also become a well-known country among the 10 countries of the Southeast region when he was the emperor of this country. His theory of governance was so popular that it was recorded, based on his personal notes, as rules to be followed by the other rulers in the course of history. After a lapse of innumerable years, a Yuan school collected the notes and stored it up in this library in the form of a book. This book demon's power was clearly above truth 9th peak level, perhaps reaching complete truth realm. And truth 9th stage, well, aren't you an ungrateful one? Yi Shiwen snorted as his hand transformed into a dragon claw and went forward to grasp the tornado. He directly caught the tornado and routed it like it was nothing. How is this possible? Who are you? The book demon couldn't believe what he just saw. His most powerful attack was easily caught and crushed by Yi Shiwen. He screamed like a scaredy cat and immediately tried to return to the book. A book demon was in the end just a book demon. He could never transform into a true emperor he used to be. Yi Shiwen thought of something, then caught the fleeing book demon and instantly annihilated it before it could hide inside his book. After destroying the book demon, Yi Shiwen moved towards the next book. He did not need to consume that book demon's body, as he had already absorbed the book's essence with the help of mysterious space. Yi Shiwen tossed that book demon's leftover consciousness over to the little book demon who was showing him around. And suddenly the little book demon's cultivation level rose from truth 1st stage to truth 5th stage after assimilating the essence of knowledge from that dead emperor's book demon. His timid appearance was abruptly replaced by the domineering appearance of an emperor as soon as he absorbed the majestic essence of the dead emperor's notebook. The little book demon was surprised, but he immediately recollected himself, then cupped his hands and respectfully said, "Thank you, brother." Yi Shiwen did not say anything in reply and continued to walk forward. Yi Shiwen seemed like just taking a walk, but was simultaneously devouring entire bookshelf worth of books at a time. Days passed one by one, and in a blink of an eye, 3 months had passed already. Yi Shiwen stayed in the library for a full 3 months and nearly read half of the books. His reading capacity had extended to outstanding proportions. Even his cultivation level had also reached a higher level than before. On the way, Yi Shiwen also encountered several book demons that attacked him. He never took the initiative to attack any of them because his motive was just to obtain knowledge, possibly without getting involved in a meaningless slaughter. However, not all book demons understood his motive and considered him as an intruder. They had spent hundreds of thousands of years in those books, and now considered this library as their home. Many of them were naive and did not know that there was actually another world outside this one. Thus, whenever Yi Shiwen used soul search on their books, they did not consider it polite and basically felt like being attacked. Hence, they also attacked him and were mercilessly butchered as a result of that. Thanks to this pattern, the little book demon benefited a lot by absorbing the essence of fallen book demons and eventually reached the peak of Truth 9th stage. Now, most of the times when book demons tried to attack Yi Shiwen, he would willingly step in to deal with them so that there was no longer a need for Yi Shiwen to personally act. Yi Shiwen noticed that this world of books was predominantly run by the law of the jungle and driven by instincts of the book demons. He also noticed the little book demon was very grateful to him for indirectly helping him in leveling up. He would never get to know that Yi Shiwen did it on purpose. Yi Shiwen had gained exotic and ancient wisdom and knew the importance of having powerful pawns to be manipulated at will. However, the good thing was that Yi Shiwen was not corrupted by excessive wisdom and power, as he had consumed all sorts of knowledge, including both the advantages of evil ideas and importance of peaceful concepts of kindness and compassion. Hence, in the end, he was fairly balanced on the brim of equilibrium between good and bad, and could use knowledge from both sides to his advantage. As Yi Shiwen continued to proceed further into the depths of this small world, he discovered something that he never thought to find them in Yi Yuan School's library. Yes, he found books on devil arts, several secret devil books on devil power techniques. There was a huge section of the library that was fully dedicated to devil books and had basically turned into a territory ruled by book devils. Jia, Jia, a human has intruded into our territory. Jia, Jia, he is really bold. Listen, everyone, we are going to devour that human's flesh and blood. He looks strong, so our cultivation should have an incredible progress. Kill him. Yi Shiwen listened to what they said and felt as if he had really walked into the territory of devils. However, they were just the book demons derived from books on devil power techniques. Of course, they did not look like other book demons, as they had taken the form of real-life devils. Hence, people called them book devils. They regarded themselves as true devils. Fortunately or unfortunately, these book devils took birth in the devil books and had stayed in this small world throughout their lives. So, their behavior was kind of understandable considering their inherent urge for violence, supremacy, and territorial dominance. Brother, you have done enough for me. Now, let me deal with them and contribute a little towards returning the favor. The little book demon said with respect. He had already started acting as a little brother to Yi Shiwen and looked up to him. Not to mention, his cultivation right now was higher than that of Yi Shiwen. The little book demon's battle efficiency had also reached a tyrannical level by absorbing the essences of several book demons. He dashed forward at a lightning speed and instantly barged into the formation of devil soldiers. Although there were a lot of devils in the devil army, most of them were weak and very few were formidable enough to sustain his attacks. The book devils did not stand a chance against him, as he had not just leveled up in the last 3 months. By absorbing the essence of mighty warriors and legendary people, he himself had come to possess an extremely domineering and aggressive, imposing aura. Not to mention, his fighting style was elegant and efficient, unlike those devils. Die devils! The little book demon shouted and released a flood of terrifying Jinyuan that wiped out most devil soldiers in one fell swoop, then absorbed their essences. Who dares to run wild in our territory? No one messes with devil race. At this time, a book devil of Truth 9th peak suddenly appeared from nowhere and rushed towards the little book demon. He had a huge troll-like figure and seemed like a real devil. The two sides indulged in a violent battle, and complementary waves swept out in all directions. Yi Shiwen immediately safeguarded the devil books. He wanted to study and save them from the aftermath of the battle. He sat down cross-legged and began to scan devil power techniques and analyze them in the mysterious space. Although devil race was infamous for terrorizing all of the 10,000 worlds, the power techniques developed by them were certainly one of the best. Yi Shiwen had been using devil wings and knew that there were a lot of other awesome devil power technique he should check out. An ordinary expert might have to consider whether to practice devil arts or not. After all, it had a very bad reputation in the world, and there were chances of self-harm if not practiced properly. But Yi Shiwen did not need to face any of such issues. He had a favorable impression of devil power technique. In fact, devil wings repeatedly saved his life several times in the past. Yi Shiwen believed that as long as he could make good use of a technique, the source of its origin did not matter. Not to mention, he could always get rid of the bad and retain the good elements of any technique with the help of mysterious space. To be continued. Chapter 273. Chapter 273. Fighting had entered a superheated phase. The fiendish book devil did not a chance again the little book demon, and was on a continuous retreat spree. Though the book devil was very strong, but his opponent was a lot stronger. With the help of Yi Shiwen, the little book demon swallowed several formidable book demons, and many of whom were superior to this fiendish book devil. Bang! The book devil could not block a full-fledged attack of Truth 9th peak level, and was sent flying by a massive explosion. After that, he was killed and then swallowed by the little book demon. Yi Shiwen glanced at the victorious book demon and also saw an evil look floating in his eyes. At this time, Yi Shiwen was busy scanning devil power techniques and choosing best ones to digest and absorb in his sea of knowledge. Traces of Machi could be seen emerging out of his body and proliferating into the air, but was soon annihilated as Machi could not affect his conscience. NT Machi equals Devilki. Yi Zaiwen's mind or conscience was like an absolute existence and couldn't be tweaked with so easily. Yi Shiwen was successful in completely absorbing devil power techniques to the extent of taking a leap from quantitative change to a qualitative change. Yes, it was time for a breakthrough. If his inner state was like a water tank, then the energy contained in his body was like water. However, now this water tank was not big enough to accommodate the ever-increasing energy content. If his inner state was like a water tank, then the stock of energy was almost the size of a pool. This comparison was enough to give a valid reason why there was a need for a breakthrough. To increase the size of the water tank in order to accommodate excess energy. Yi Zaiwen's inner state itself was much stronger than others on the same cultivation level. Not to mention, after the recent studying spree in the last few months, he managed to stretch the water tank to the size of a pool. And this was enough to accommodate all of the water energy he had accumulated since the last breakthrough. His cultivation had already reached a perfect situation that was required before each breakthrough. Now he had no choice but to have a breakthrough. Otherwise, continuing further wouldn't have any great effect. However, his cultivation and accumulation were extremely profound, to an extent that once he had a breakthrough, his battle efficiency and energy content would reach complete truth level. In that case, no one in the truth realm would be his opponent. The next step was half-step legendary realm. Easy to say, but only a few were able to take the so-called half-step into the legendary realm. However, Yi Zaiwen's accumulation had increased up to a terrifying level, and after the breakthrough, even an expert of half-step legendary realm wouldn't be able to kill him. Yi Shiwen would still have a chance of escape. Although still insufficient, he wanted to step into half-step legendary realm because only after that he might have a chance to participate in the so-called assessment. If so many people were choosing to stay at half-step legendary realm, there definitely was a reason behind this kind of strategy, and he also wanted to test it out. However, food should be eaten only a mouthful at a time, and Yi Shiwen knew this fact quite well. Now that the decision was made, he was ready to have a breakthrough in the library while Yimo and the little book demon were going to be his bodyguards. Though right now, these two bodyguards were somewhat tensed, as this was the world of books, infested with book demons. Although not all books had given birth to book demons, there were still enough to pose a threat to him, and especially the book devils. Of course, most book demons preferred to stay in their books, but a breakthrough was going to cause turbulence in this world and might attract the attention of unwanted guests. A great danger was associated with having a breakthrough here, but Yi Shiwen had already made his decision and no one could change his mind now. Yi Mo immediately commanded Tianyuan Mirror and sent it hovering over Yi Zaiwen's head. It released a scarlet curtain that enveloped Yi Shiwen completely from all sides. The little book demon was not far from there and seemed all prepared to perform his bodyguard duty. He held a great sense of gratitude towards Yi Shiwen and considered him like a big brother. He witnessed Yi Zaiwen's mercy and compassion firsthand and managed to leave the lowest position of Truth First Stage and reached quite a high position of Truth Ninth Stage in the world of book demons. Now he had enough qualification to send an application to Yuan School and get out of this world, thereby becoming a true disciple in Yuan School. All thanks to Yi Shiwen, and he did not know what he must do to return the favor. Yi Shiwen changed his destiny, and he was willing to do anything for this big brotherly figure, even by putting his life on the line. Yi Shiwen sat down cross-legged and took out 2 half-step legendary zombie cores. Suddenly, a majestic deadki spew out into the air, and it seemed like the devil territory instantly evolved into the kingdom of death. Yi Shiwen wasn't surprised, as these 2 cores of half-step legendary zombies were bound to be terrifying, so this kind of outcome was understandable. Rippling deadki proliferated into the air, but the scarlet curtain blocked its path and contained it firmly around Yi Shiwen. At the same time, swirling Jinyuan came out of his body and began to absorb the essence of the 2 cores. The raw energy first passed through Tianyuan Mirror and entered phases of filtration and purification. Only after that, the purest form of energy was absorbed by Yi Shiwen. Although a major section of impure energy was stripped out, the remaining energy was pure and more than enough for having a breakthrough. Large fluctuation of energy around his body eventually began to attract the attention of several old book demons. Damn, this man is tyrannical. He completely obliterated the kingdom of book devils. But he is just an expert of Truth Realm. How can he be so tyrannical? I cannot believe my eyes. Ga, I sense deadki. I am so happy. This is really a lucky day for Shimo. At this time there was a sudden burst of deadki on top of a bookshelf. NT. Shimo equals corpse devil. He is referring to himself as Shimo. A set of greedy eyes looked at the 2 zombie cores held in the hands of Yi Shiwen, who was deeply engrossed in meditating under the protection of Tianyuan Mirror. One must know that the owner of these greedy eyes was none other than a book devil that had come out of a secret book on deadki-based devil technique. However, there was no deadki available in the library, and so there was no way for Shimo to practice this secret devil technique. But when he saw 2 deadki-rich cores in Yi Zaiwen's hands, he could not hide a sudden burst of happiness in his heart. He was just 1 step away from stepping into half-step legendary realm, and these cores could make his wish come true. He was actually one of the top ranked book demons in the entire library. Jia, those dead cores is mine. Shimo gave out a loud and sharp cry, and a large hand that was purely made up of deadquint towards Yi Shiwen. NT, Jia, strange laughter peculiar to devils. One Piece style, laughing face, stop! At this time, the little book demon suddenly saw that Shimo was planning to attack Yi Shiwen. The little book demon immediately used Royal Fist technique and released a powerful attack that was so potent that it was almost on verge of reaching the complete Truth Realm. This was a very terrifying martial art, and as soon as it was invoked, the atmosphere suddenly changed, and it seemed as if the entire world must obey his order. Yi Mo was also getting slightly anxious at this moment because he himself had never witnessed a devil using deadki-based attack. Humph, you alone cannot stop me, kid. I can eat you whole and on go, you understand that? Shimo got furious and shouted, while at the same time he changed the direction of his own attack towards the little book demon. Shimo was at complete Truth Realm, whereas the little book demon was almost about to enter the same. But there was still enough gap between their strengths, not to mention Shimo could be considered one of the strongest experts on the same level. Boom! The little demon's Royal Fist attack was compromised, and the complementary waves of aftermath crashed against Tianyuan Mirror's protection barrier. Afterward, Shimo's dead-ki attack further went towards the little book demon to finish him off. Bang! The little book demon stepped back, while also trying to use his arms to block the attack, but failed in doing so. Along with his blood spattering out, there appeared a huge wound on his arm, to an extent that it was almost close to being torn off his body, which was very frightening. If he had been slow even for an instant, then he would inevitably have lost an arm today. Gee! A cruel smile appeared on Shimo's face as he licked his lips and said, "Jeje, you look tasty, so this old man has decided to eat you, but first I will swallow the dead cores and step into half-step legendary realm. Then I will do you the favor of being my food. As long as I am alive, you'll never succeed." The little book demon said in a firm voice, and also noticed that the last attack exactly the same as the one used by his previous devil opponent, though this one was a bit more potent in comparison. The little book demon decided to use a devil technique against Shimo. So, he released Machi from his body that suddenly transformed into the shadow of Devil Emperor with long horns and steady build. Huh, you think using a childish technique such as this will have any effect on me? I will bring an end to your wishful thinking, kid. Behold the power of my eternal dead-ki arts. Shimo laughed strangely, then instantly fired a punch, releasing a stream of dead-ki into the air. The surging dead-ki was so horrifying that it seemed as if it was defying the very concept of 6 reincarnations and literally reversing the concept altogether. Boom! The 2 attacks collided, and Shimo's attack expectedly had an upper hand yet again. Shimo's skill was much more than that of the little book demon, then this outcome was understandable. Jia, it's time to get my cores. Shimo was about to attack Tianyuan Mirror's protective screen, when suddenly a spear came out of nowhere and stabbed him right in the chest, nailing him into the ground. Shimo turned to look what happened just now and realized that the spear had been thrown by the little book demon. He immediately got furious and shouted, "If you are really so eager to die, I'll gladly fulfill your wish. I changed my mind about first seizing the cores because now I am going to devour you first." Shimo condensed a big devil claw that was made up of a mixture of dead-ki and inchi, and the very next instant, the devil claw went towards the little book demon at an incredibly fast speed, as if to rip him apart. However, at this time he heard a loud shout, "Stop!" A tyrannical aura engulfed the entire area all of a sudden. Then huge dragon claw appeared out of nowhere and advanced towards the devil claw. Boom! The devil claw was instantly grabbed and then crushed by the dragon claw, resulting in a massive explosion. To be continued. NT, yes, this chapter is without a title, tongue sticking out. Why don't you guys come up with something? Chapter 274. Chapter 274. Overturning the Heaven's Seal. Boom! The devil claw was instantly annihilated by Yi Zaiwen's attack. You are courageous, I give you that. Yi Shiwen sneered, then stood up after having completely absorbed the zombie cores. He had already broken into Truth 8 stage, and this breakthrough was a lot easier than the previous one. If Thaner State was a water tank and energy was water, then he had already been successful in the expansion of water tank, and in having done so, the difficulty could be imagined, but now he had already built a good pool of energy to keep the irrigation line active. He had enough energy to have this breakthrough, and even after that, he still had a lot of spare energy. After stepping into Truth 8 stage, his battle strength had already reached complete Truth realm because his accumulation was way too much. In fact, reaching such a state was impossible for anyone else. NT, others cannot accumulate the way Yi Shiwen does because their bodies will explode with excess accumulation of energy. That is why other experts require frequent breakthroughs. Yi Shiwen has a tyrant body to sustain and contain much higher levels of energy within his body. What is going on here? Shimo was confused and obviously did not know what just happened. Damn, how did you absorb my cores so fast? How dare you, human? Now, brace yourself because I am going to eat you to make up for my loss. Shimo's anger level was off the charts. After all, a golden opportunity of stepping into half-step legendary realm was destroyed by Yi Shiwen right in front of his eyes. Shimo's whole body was instantly covered in deadkey fire, also releasing a putrid smell in the air, and suddenly, several bone claws approached Yi Shiwen to tear him to pieces. This deadkey fire was very insidious and could melt shields and barriers like butter with the mere touch. Die, 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 die. Shimo entered a wild rage mode and immediately attacked Yi Shiwen. Your inconsequential technique is not even worth witnessing. Yi Shiwen sneered and stretched out his big hands. His golden body made a sudden appearance, and his golden hands went forward to grasp the incoming attack. Yi Shiwen appeared just like a reincarnated overlord as he directly caught the deadkey fire attack. ZZZZ! The deadkey fire was still trying its best to corrode Yi Zaiwen's palms, but did not succeed in doing so, and suddenly got extinguished like it was nothing. There was an incredible look of disbelief on the little book demon's face because Shimo was a well-known powerhouse in the library, though not among the top ones, but powerful enough to scare most book demons. However, that Shimo's most terrible attack wasn't able to put even a scratch on Yi Zaiwen's skin. The little book demon's mind was blown by this scene because he just couldn't imagine the extent of his elder brother's strength. What? This is impossible. Shimo looked incredibly at Yi Shiwen. I cannot believe my eyes. My zombie art technique should be invincible. Invincible, you say? Don't even try to be so full of yourself, especially in front of me. Yi Shiwen sneered as he had actually killed 2 half-step legendary zombies earlier, and this Shimo was nothing like those genuine zombies. Shimo was just a book demon, belonging to a book on corpse devil practice techniques. I'd like to see what kind of secret lies in your zombie arts. Yi Shiwen also had a keen interest in zombie arts. If a person dies and his soul leaves the body, then what exactly brought the corpse back to life as a zombie? In this world, zombies were considered undead, somewhere between alive and dead. Rippling mountain seal. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and a huge printed ribbon with a seal on it, enormous and powerful, instantly appeared from the void and smashed down like a falling meteor. This was a very horrible scene, as if the earth would turn inside out. Not to mention, this attack was locked on Shimo and there was no place to hide. This was the stunning heritage that Yi Shiwen obtained from the tomb slave. The name of this inheritance was called Overturning the Heaven's Seal. In his previous life, he had heard about extremely destructive magical weapons, and this was a similarly stunning attack arcane, derived directly from the source of an extinct secret sect. Yi Shiwen got this ancient arcane attack technique as a reward, and its destructive power was unparalleled. This secret arcane technique was divided into 3 stages: Rippling Mountain Seal, Inverting the Ocean Seal, and Overturning the Heaven's Seal. Yi Shiwen had already mastered all 3 stages, but at his current skill level, he could only use Rippling Mountain Seal. However, its destructive power was ridiculously large, enough to smash down an expert of complete Truth Realm. Although Yi Zaiwen's skill was far better than his, the power of Rippling Mountain Seal was needless to say. Shimo's thinking process was a little slow, but he finally reacted. He ultimately realized that Yi Shiwen was an absolute existence, and that he himself did not stand a chance against Yi Shiwen. At least, that was the case at present. Even his most powerful attack couldn't break Yi Zaiwen's defense. Do not kill me. Please do not kill me. I can explain to you the most exquisite zombie theory, allowing you progress by leaps and bounds in deadkey arts. Shimo quickly shouted in a panicked state. I do not need it. Yi Shiwen already had mysterious space, so he was not interested in this offer. Boom! There sounded a terrifying fulmination noise, and Shimo was smashed into a group of essence, grasped in Yi Zaiwen's big hand. Yi Shiwen glanced at the little book demon and threw the group of essence towards him. The little book demon's body immediately absorbed the group of essence and began to digest it rapidly. After a long time, The imposing aura of the little book demon suddenly stagnated for a moment, followed by his aura exploding the very next instant, sending him directly into the complete truth realm. He was at the peak of Truth Ninth Stage, narrowly failing to step into the complete truth realm, but Yi Shiwen helped him once again in this vital breakthrough. Swallowing other book demons or book devils was the most efficient method for book demons to enhance cultivation. I don't know how to show my gratitude to you, brother, for showing such graciousness towards me. The little book demon cupped his hands across the chest and sincerely said, if Yi Shiwen was not there to help him, he would have continued to stay at the bottom in the hierarchy of book demons. Would you like me to take you out of this place? Yi Shiwen stared intently at the little book demon and asked, Of course, I would absolutely love that. I have been willing to get out of here for such a long time. The little book demon quickly answered, as he was aware of living in this small library world all this time, and he was also aware of existence of a large world outside this small space. He wanted to see the world where Yuan School existed and the tyrannical guard wouldn't allow any of the book demons to go outside. Yuan School was afraid of evil book demon causing havoc in their world, so these book demons weren't allowed to come out of the library world. In order to go out, they must take refuge in Yuan School and contribute significantly by giving their distinguished service. The book demons were expected to get real strong in order to get an opportunity of going out to perform tasks for Yuan School as deacons. Only then they would have a strong chance of becoming a full-fledged Yuan School's disciple, which was again a rare opportunity. However, such a rare case was a minority and sometimes wouldn't happen for hundreds of years. For him, this was a luxury that even after having taken birth few decades back, with Yi Zaiwen's help, he could enjoy becoming one of such rare cases and might have a chance to go out of this world. Reaching complete truth realm was literally a dream come true for him, and all thanks to Yi Shiwen. The gratitude he felt towards Yi Shiwen was naturally difficult to put into words. Good. I have established a faction in the outer world. It's called Qinyu Faction. But I must leave Yuan School to join True Martial University, so I am going to find a way to make you a true disciple. You will assume the position of the leader of Qinyu Faction in my absence. What do you say? This was his plan all along. In his absence, Qinyu Faction, being a truth-level faction, was going to need a strong leader, as there already were several true disciples in this faction, and none of them were strong enough to be the leader. One true disciple was enough in an ordinary faction, but Qinyu Faction was the faction of a pro-disciple and must be led by a competent leader. Yi Zaiwen's plan was to cultivate this little book demon and make him competent enough to assume role of Qinyu Faction's leader. Then he would feel relieved while going to True Martial University. Now an expert of complete truth realm was going to safeguard Qinyu Faction. Plus Yi Shiwen had already reconciled with Chu Jinkai, the strongest disciple in the entire sect. With all these preparations, Yi Shiwen was reassured that Qinyu Faction, his family, and friends would stay safe in his absence. Of course, Yi Shiwen didn't miss to witness the little book demon's loyalty towards him when he was willing to risk his own to protect Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had already seen through the little book demon's honest attitude. Otherwise, he wouldn't have put so much effort in nurturing him. I am very much willing, I surely would. The little book demon nodded and couldn't hide his excitement. He was not just going to become a true disciple, he would also become the leader of a faction. This was really a dream come true. Do you have a name? Yi Shiwen asked. No. The little book demon said in a somewhat embarrassed way. Such being the case, I'll give you a name. From now on, your name shall be Yi Shu Yi Book. Also from now on, you are a member of Yi Clan. To be continued. Chapter 275. Chapter 275. Freeloader Wolf Cub after killing Shimo. Yi Shiwen did not continue to go into the depths of the library. Although he wanted to read all of the books, there were a lot of powerful book demons ahead, and many of them were at half-step legendary level and above. At present, he was not an opponent of these tyrannical book demons, but he was happy to have benefited a lot in this library. He stopped accumulating knowledge and went to the library section where books and records on true Martial University were kept. TMU was set up a long time ago, after human ancestors came to Zhanwujia. In order to resist the attacks from demon beasts, they established a sacred place dedicated to preserving and enhancing martial arts heritage from ancient times. The history of humankind was extremely long, and finding out the concrete specifics related to its beginning was now impossible to some extent. Because of various wars and other reasons, the history of mankind had a lot of loopholes and dark eras. A lot of things were buried in the dust of history, perhaps deliberately or circumstantially. One could almost say that the southern region, and even the entire Zhanwujia, every large or small influence in the vicinity, more or less, had their origins in TMU. In fact, most sects and factions were once started by the disciples of TMU in the past. Generally speaking, all these books gave only introductory information regarding TMU, which made him somewhat disappointed. But in the end, anyway, knowing something was better than not knowing anything. Yi Shiwen made up his mind and decided that it was time to go back. He took Yi Shu along and went out of the library. It was not easy for book demons to leave the library unless they had sufficient merit points or there was someone with authority willing to take responsibility. Yi Shiwen fulfilled this criterion quite well, being a pro-disciple who was destined to become a great man in the future. Taking away Yi Shu was simply not a problem. He would just need to lend some merit points to Yi Shu for the time being until the payback. Since Yi Shiwen had accumulated a lot of merit points during Chenji Island incident and never had time to use them, so now he could easily lend them to Yi Shu for the sake of his freedom. You really want to take him away? The old guard looked at Yi Shiwen with a somewhat unexpected look flashing in his eyes. The most surprising thing was a drastic upgrade in Yi Shu's level in the last few months. Yi Shu was one of the few book demons who performed chores for this old guard, so he certainly knew the extent of Yi Shu's strength before he left off with Yi Shiwen. Yes, Yi Shiwen said. Well, looking at his current cultivation, he can truly apply for a transfer. The old guard smiled and looked somewhat happily at Yi Shu, then said, It seems you have obtained a large fortune this time, haven't you? Your future prospects shall be limitless. Thanks a lot, Senior. Yi Shu's eyes were full of tears. If not for this old man, a weak book demon like himself would have perished long ago. He would either have been caught as a slave for some powerful book demon or would have been devoured. The law of the jungle was prevalent in this library, and he was able to survive this long only because of this old man. Yi Shiwen, this old guy, is a book demon. Gee, such a formidable monster he is. At this time, Yi Mo's voice sounded in Yi Zaiwen's mind and finally confirmed the old man's true identity. Being a book demon with extremely profound cultivation, he was tasked with guarding this library, and he alone was enough to act as a deterrent against countless book demons. After saying farewell to the old guard, both of them went out of the library. This was the first time Yi Shu was stepping in this world, and one could see excitement spread all over his face. After spending a few months in the world of books, Yi Zaiwen's cultivation had undergone an enormous sublimation. Yi Shiwen returned to Chinyu Peak and found out that the entire place had been ruined by the wolf cub in his absence. All those cranes and demon beast pets accumulated by Chinyu faction and its members in more than a year's worth of time had been devoured by the wolf cub, not to mention even immortality pills, and Dawn faced a similar fate. In a short period of 3 months, all these important faction resources had been scourged by this son of a bitch. After coming back, the first scene that greeted Yi Zaiwen's eyes was the wolf cub roasting a rabbit beast, just the way Yi Shiwen used to do on the Demon Island. Yi Shiwen got furious when he saw this and gave a solid slap on his face and sent him flying high into the sky. Did he roast and ate all those valuable birds and beasts like this? Yi Shiwen could not believe that the wolf cub would do such a thing in his absence. Since the day Yi Shiwen left Chinyu Peak, the wolf cub had constantly been eating precious demon birds and beasts which were owned by Chinyu faction. No one would dare to stop this bastard. And in fact, there was no one on entire Chinyu Peak that could stop him. And Luffy, smiley face, he used to be at Truth 8 stage when arrived here. But in the last few months, his strength level directly leaped up to complete Truth Realm, making him only a bit weaker than Yi Shiwen. According to Yi Mo's guess, although the wolf cub did not remember too much about his own origins, it seemed like he belonged to the bloodline of noble wolf clan that might have disappeared along with ancient heaven. He stayed in his egg for ages, buried under the ground, and lost most of his power, but that did not change the fact that he was a noble wolf and held limitless future prospects. Especially this wolf cub had a sort of amnesia, and most of his memories were in a suppressed state right now. Otherwise, it would be hard to predict the extent of his power rise once he would regain his lost memories. What did this mean? This meant that this son of a bitch was likely to grow at an unimaginable speed, without facing any bottlenecks in the path, accumulating and regaining the strength back that had worn down with the passage of time. Not to forget, he was of noble descent and was bound to possess inherent talent, so his future progress was going to be very fast. In fact, according to Yi Mo's speculation, the progress speed of both Yi Shiwen and the wolf cub were almost the same. During the last 3 months, Yi Shiwen learned so many things and experienced a number of battles to finally achieve the battle efficiency of complete Truth Realm, while this bastard just wasted time on eating and drinking and reached complete Truth Realm. However, there were a lot of evildoers, monsters, like Yi Shiwen in this world. Some were born in Truth Realm, while some in Legendary Realm. In the end, talent and bloodline were not the only factors that determined success. Yi Shiwen had already defeated many and would continue to do so. Nothing was going to shake his heart that was filled with motivation and ambition. How did a freeloader like you even dare to think about damaging your host's private property? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Yi Shiwen said in a somewhat silent yet scary voice. Wait, stop, you don't need to be so angry. I did not eat too much and made sure that I don't waste food. The wolf cub leisurely flew back to where Yi Shiwen was and said, I was controlling my appetite, do not be so stingy. You have eaten almost all the birds and beasts belonging to faction, and now you have the guts to talk back? You have done an irreversible damage, and forgiveness isn't something I give that easily. Yi Shiwen was angry because he never expected to see so much chaos on Chinyu Peak, all because of this bastard's selfish and immature attitude. Now, it had become absolutely necessary to teach this spoiled wolf prince a lesson. Yi Shiwen went back to his palace and invited over Yi Feng and Yi Rushue. Little brother, you have not only made our parents proud, you have also earned a big long face for Yi Yuan School. Yi Rushue patted Yi Zaiwen's shoulder and said with a smile. Yi Shiwen smiled back and thought that she was still the same, hadn't changed one bit, not to mention he still cherished his family just the way he did earlier. Getting stronger did not change him either. Neither did it change his identity or the love towards his family and friends. I heard that foolish 8th prince tried his best to kill you. Yi Rushue asked, despite knowing that the 8th prince was already dead. But she could not help but furiously clench her teeth. She remembered how that 8th prince had tried to use her younger brother as a stepping stone and had also used extreme methods against him. She was actually very happy that Yi Shiwen got rid of that madman. Although Yi Zaiwen's present strength was far beyond hers, in her eyes, he was still her little brother whom she used to protect all the time. As long as she was around, no one dared to bully her little brother, and she still adored him the same way. Yes. Yi Shiwen began to describe the events in detail, and his 2 siblings were secretly speechless with admiration. Although he was not at all trying to boast or something in explaining the whole incident superficially, but both Yi Feng and Yi Rushue just couldn't stop themselves from getting flabbergasted. After all, even after being at Truth 6 stage, Yi Shiwen had single-handedly defeated 2 experts who were at Truth 8th peak at that time. They could clearly feel the intensity of situation and realized how close to death Yi Shiwen had been in a short span of 6 months, and that too not once or twice, but a lot many times. Yi Shiwen appeared very majestic on the outside, not to mention He also held the historical and unprecedented record of becoming a pro-disciple in the shortest span of time. No one could imagine that he had experienced many life and death situations and had risked his life several times in deadly battles. "Brother, sister, I have decided to go to True Martial University." Yi Shiwen told them the real purpose behind inviting them here. "What? Are you really going to True Martial University?" Yi Feng said, "You know about it?" Yi Shiwen asked in a somewhat perplexed manner. Although TMU's presence was well known in Zhanwujie, only powerhouses above a certain level were concerned about its reality. For ordinary disciples, core disciples, or even most of the true disciples, its existence was nothing more than a bloated fable. They were absolutely not exposed to the happenings and news about TMU, and it was so much above their own existences that they did not even bother to find out. In fact, even Yi Shiwen got to know about it not long ago. It was obvious that the news and rumors about TMU only existed in the community of some powerhouses. To be continued. Chapter 276. Chapter 276. Pro-disciples get together. Well, recently there has been a huge uproar about TMU in the sect. Yi Feng said, "A lot of people are discussing this matter because I heard that some people from TMU are visiting our sect. They plan to take some pro-disciples and also some true disciples from Yuan School for evaluation. TMU has personally sent over people for procuring disciples." Yi Shiwen asked. "Yes, in fact, there has always been a solid connection between TMU and Yuan School. After all, our predecessors used to be the students of TMU, so they are especially sending people to take Brother Qi and other worthy candidates back to TMU." Yi Feng replied, "This was clearly a kind of preferential treatment. In fact, TMU must have sent people to recruit from a series of major forces, not just Yuan School. However, there were many small forces, and they naturally wouldn't get a chance to enjoy such privilege. If they wanted their disciples to join TMU, they must go through a rigorous selection procedure. Everyone's saying that even the head has been dispatched to entertain the guests from TMU." Yi Feng said, "But I have heard that TMU's requirements and standards are off the charts. Maybe it's too early for you to be thinking about going to TMU. I suggest you wait for the next time. Take your time and train to surpass those requirements." "I have a reason to go, and it has to be this time. I cannot wait for the next time." Yi Shiwen said, "Little brother, you really want to go? Is that your final decision?" Yi Rushue said with some dismay, if Yi Shiwen really went to TMU, she wouldn't be able to see him for a long time. "Yes." Yi Shiwen very firmly said, "Wait, I forgot to tell you one thing. There is a meeting of pro-disciples and true disciples 2 days from now. Brother Chu has sent invitation card. If you go to this meeting, perhaps you will get a chance to participate in the recruitment process." Yi Feng looked at Yi Shiwen and said, the realm of truth was unattainable for him right now, so he couldn't accompany his younger brother. Yi Feng clenched his fists and secretly wished for the success of his younger brother. He wasn't too far from entering into the truth realm, but he was still too far from his younger's level. Currently, he was at Xiantian 8th stage, and reaching truth realm was only a matter of time. He would most likely step into truth realm before the age of 30, and his progress speed was certainly not slow. Besides him, even Yi Rushue, Zhang Sunyuan, and the others from the same batch did not show slow progress speed. All of them were bound to become strong experts in coming few decades. In a flash, 2 years had passed, and new entrants had flocked to join Yuan School. Yi Feng used to be a new disciple back then, but now he was a full-fledged senior. However, his younger brother was going to leave the sect. "All right, I will go, but if I do get selected for TMU, then you will attain responsibility of looking after Qinyu faction." Yi Shiwen said, "I have already reconciled with Chu Jinkai, so he and his faction will not try to suppress our faction. If anything big happens, you can also ask him for help." If Yi Feng knew about TMU, He should also know about Chu Jingkai stepping into the legendary realm and its implications in power balance and interior politics. In addition, I have found a strong helper for you. He is a book demon and has already achieved complete truth realm. He is going to become a true disciple of Yi Yuan school, and his addition to Qinyu faction will increase the strength of our faction considerably. Yi Shiwen said, "Brother, thank you so much for doing all this for us." Yi Feng said. He also knew that addition of an expert of complete truth realm was going to give a whole new height to Qinyu faction status in Yi Yuan school. Unless a pro-disciple like Chu Jingkai personally attacked them, no one else could cause trouble for Qinyu faction in absence of Yi Shiwen. "It's nothing, brother." Yi Shiwen replied with a smile. After spending some time leisurely chatting with his siblings, Yi Shiwen announced that he was going to indulge himself in closed-door training, and no one must disturb him. Yi Feng was now officially going to handle Qinyu faction, and Yi Shiwen did not plan to meddle either. Although Yi Shiwen announced about closed-door training, he was not really going to, as there was no benefit of only 2 days' worth of training. He preferred resting for 2 days, sitting alone, and strategizing about the upcoming recruitment process. Days passed quickly, and soon it was time for True Disciples' General Assembly. Yi Shiwen went to the Full Moon Peak and brought along the wolf cub with him. The General Assembly was going to take place at Full Moon Peak, initiated by Chu Jingkai. Of course, he had come forward to entertain the guest as the half-lord of the peak. Full Moon Peak is like the main administrative building of a school. Chu Jingkai was originally not a disciple of Full Moon Peak, but now he was made one all of a sudden. This gave a very clear indication, since the head of Yi Yuan school had always been a disciple of Full Moon Peak for ages, so this sudden change of events was quite inevitable. In other words, Chu Jingkai was the next candidate for the position of sect head, with no visible competitors, so he was made a disciple of Full Moon Peak in a predetermined fashion. Perhaps in the coming few decades or a century, the current sect head would step down from the throne, and Chu Jingkai would officially become the head of Yi Yuan school. But this had nothing to do with Yi Shiwen, because he was never interested in becoming the head of Yi Yuan school. In fact, he was not even interested to become the leader of Qinyu faction. He preferred freedom over anything. At this time, hundreds of true disciples had gathered in the assembly. Even those who had been indulged in closed-door training for several years came out to participate in this general assembly. No one dared to disrespect Chu Jingkai for obvious reasons. Brother Yi is here. Greetings to Brother Yi. So he is the famous Brother Yi? He is really such a young and handsome genius. Being 20 years old and holding the title of a pro-disciple, he has really broken all records in Yi Yuan school. Even Sister Hua was not as quick as him. Now, both Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan commanded respect in the community of true disciples, being the 2 youngest pro-disciples of Yi Yuan school. Yi Shiwen noticed several figures sitting above stone blocks and talking to each other. There were 2 particularly striking women in the group, and both of them looked outstanding, like 2 celestial maidens descended from heavens. One of the 2 was Hua Menghan, and the other woman was also a pro-disciple named Xueyan Luo. And her name kind of means hookah basket. She looked a lot different and exceptionally mature compared to Hua Menghan. Qi Fifin was sitting next to these women, and there was a usual sunny smile on his face. His golden eyes were dazzling in the sunlight, just like his blonde hair. Next to him, a man in Ilo robe was sitting with a serious look on his face. He was also a pro-disciple named Huang Luochin, Yellow Dust, and in contrast to Qi Fifin's sunny temperament, he appeared cold like an iceberg. Chu Jingkai was sitting next to him. He was clad in a magnificent Chinese robe and possessed the strongest imposing aura in the group. Among these pro-disciples, there were 2 unknown men also present with somewhat haughty looks on their faces. One of them looked roughly 20 years old, wearing embroidered robe, and looked handsome, but with a trace of overflowing arrogance writing his face. Especially whenever he was looking at the true disciples of Yi Yuan school, the arrogant look on face was getting prominent. The other man also looked arrogant. He had a tall stature and was clad in a white robe. "Young Yi, you finally came." Chu Jinkai's face revealed a pleased look as his sharp eyes caught Yi Shiwen approaching them. He immediately got up to welcome Yi Shiwen with a bright smile. "Greetings to Brother Chu." Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said, "Greetings to all senior brothers and sisters." Excluding Hua Menghan, everyone else here was older than him. They deserved courtesy and respect, and he was aware of that. "Young Yi, allow me to introduce you to our guests. These two gentlemen are from TMU. They are called young Li Fei and young Guyan." Chu Jinkai introduced them to Yi Shiwen. Actually, young Li Fei's grandfather was a disciple of Yi Yuan school. It is really fateful for our sect that our predecessors are now part of TMU. Chu Jinkai said. Both Li Fei and Guyan were young talents of TMU, and also one of the most outstanding disciples from the lot. However, the clear arrogance visible on their faces was making Yi Shiwen feel somewhat weird. "We are lucky and grateful that young Li Fei has personally come to fetch young Huang and the other eligible candidates to TMU. Chu Jinkai smiled and said, "Now he anyway could no longer participate in the assessment of TMU. Li Fei nodded and glanced at Yi Shiwen somewhat disdainfully. "I don't like these smelly, arrogant farts," the wolf cub said to Yi Shiwen. It was rare that both he and Yi Shiwen reached the same point of view this time. "I also feel like slapping these two arrogant pricks." Yi Mo's voice rang in Yi Zaiwen's mind. "Ha ha ha, young Yi, you and young Li Fei are contemporaries, the two eminent members of the younger generation. Since Li Fei has connections with Yi Yuan school, both of you should very well become close friends in the future." Chu Jinkai said with a smile, "I don't think that's going to happen. There's no way this guy is worthy of being called an eminent member of the younger generation." Gu Yin looked disdainfully at Yi Shiwen and said, he obviously did not acknowledge Yi Shiwen at all and did not let go of this chance to insult Yi Shiwen in front of everyone. "Perhaps you are considered quite well in the southeast region, but for the disciples of TMU, you are nothing." Gu Yin further said and did not make any concessions while looking down on Yi Shiwen. The southeast region was an inconspicuous place in the entire south region, and TMU attracted geniuses from the entire region. So it was clear that mentioning Yi Zaiwen's fame and relating it only to the southeast region was an attempt to look down on him. "Fuck this arrogant piece of shit. How can he dare to behave so arrogantly in front of me?" The angry wolf cub said with a furious look flashing in his predatory eyes. He could not accept that someone else was more arrogant than him. "NT, the wolf cub is referring to himself as Prince." As soon as Chi Fifan and the others heard this, suddenly their complexions changed. To be continued. Chapter 277. Chapter 277. You are a dog. These words were enough to look down on all the experts belonging to the southeast region, let alone Yi Shiwen. Li Fei did not say anything, but he was obviously standing in support of his comrade's statement. Although his own ancestor used to be a disciple of Yi Yuan school, this did not mean that he held some special respect for Yi Yuan school or its people. Even if Yi Yuan school was regarded as an above-average level sect in the southeast region, it was still nothing when considered in respect of entire southern region. In fact, outside the influence of Great Yu State, Yi Yuan school was just another sect, and a lot of people hadn't even heard its name yet. Gu Yin said it casually, but the disciples of Yi Yuan school clearly looked pissed off. It didn't matter whether the statement was true or not. They were furious because their sect was insulted right in front of them. Not just Yi Shiwen. Even their own pride was assaulted by an outsider. Damn, this arrogant motherfucker. He really wants to pick a fight. I will tear him to shreds with my claws. The wolf cub communicated via soul search in his usual foul-mouthed manner. Obviously, he could no longer bear the arrogant behavior of Gu Yin. Nt. The wolf cub always refers to himself arrogantly as this prince, just like Orisama in Japanese. Yi Shiwen looked calm on the outside, but his brain was calculating strategies about how to deal with this situation that was going out of hand. Yi Shiwen carefully observed those two men and realized that Gu Yin was obviously less than 50 years old, but was already at the peak of complete truth realm. In Yi Zaiwen's knowledge, only Emperor Qin and other few were talented enough to reach such a high level at a considerably young age. Nt. Less than 50 is considered young. TMU strength was really not a joke. Li Fei, on the other hand, was already at half-step legendary realm and did not appear like an ordinary expert at all. No wonder he was so full of himself. To be able to reach such a high cultivation level at this age, he must have obtained some kind of precious heritage. Qi Fifin was standing on one side, and his face looked bright, yet somewhat flushed, however. There was a bright smile spread across his face. No one knew whether he was angry or not angry, or perhaps very angry. Young Gu, this is not the right way of talking to your peers. This world is large, filled with countless talented people. Maybe Yang Yi is really a genius, as Brother Chu said. Li Fei came out to mediate, but there was still a clear hint of arrogance in his tone. Yi Shiwen simply did not pay any attention to him, just sat down on a stone chair. It seemed as if this whole thing had no impact on him whatsoever. Nt. Yi Shiwen has grown up, I guess? After reading so many books in the library, he has gained wisdom. It seems like he has calmed down a little. Chu Jinkai smiled wryly and thought that the scene reminded him of the tale in which a megalomaniac meets a hedgehog and gets angry. It was hard to figure out how all of this was going to end in the end. Nt. Hedgehogs don't give a crap about who the attacker is. They just don't give a fuck. Tongue sticking out, Yi Zaiwen's temperament had always been puzzling others. In fact, right now, only Qi Fifin was slightly aware of what Yi Shiwen might be thinking or how would he react in a situation such as this. Qi Fifin had always been in touch with Yi Shiwen, and out of the older pro-disciples, only he was considered a close rival of Yi Shiwen. It was a common topic of discussion in Yi Yuan school that a battle between Yi Shiwen and Qi Fifin was inevitable because they were the two mythical disciples of Yi Yuan school. Yi Shiwen was the hedgehog here, and no one must dare to touch him. But once he was touched, game over. No, Yi Shiwen was not governed by arrogance. Neither was he governed by pride and prestige. However, he was well known for crushing overgrown arrogance in the best ways possible. Right now, Chu Jinkai was the host, and the two sides were on the verge of a clash. What was the best thing to do in such a situation? Sure enough, everyone saw that Yi Shiwen did not give him face, and that was why Li Fei's complexion suddenly turned ugly. Sit down, everyone, and rest at ease. Today, I have summoned everyone to throw a welcoming dinner for young Li Fei and young Gu Yin. I am so honored that these two have traveled great distances to come to our Yi Yuan school. Chu Jinkai said. Chu Jinkai was a resourceful guy in a somewhat dishonest way. He somehow managed to calm down the heat. After all, the matter at hand did not just concern Yi Shiwen. The true disciples were also hurt by Gu Yin's arrogant statement, and Chu Jinkai had to make sure that both Yi Shiwen and the true disciples did not react in a reactionary manner. Yi Shiwen, unexpectedly, did not retaliate in the way everyone was expecting him to. While Chu Jinkai was busy handling the situation, he was busy talking to Yi Mo. This TMU indeed seems like the topmost university of the South region. What do you think? Yi Shiwen said, Maybe, but its disciples are horrible. For some reason, I have really come to hate these two. Yi Mo said. Yi Shiwen was not at all bothered by their arrogant demeanor because he was more excited about getting tough opponents, and that too so many of them. A sense of competitiveness, and the urge to beat them all. These were the things going on in his heart. Yi Yuan school did not have many genius evildoers monsters. However, the very thought of encountering an entire batch of geniuses in TMU was exciting in its own way. Chu Jinkai's hands were gently playing zither. giving rise to a smooth, flowing melody like the passing clouds and running water. Chu Jinkai was so good at it that the music was attracting the birds which descended next to him and began to chirp, complementing the music in a pleasant way. Everyone was immersed in such a beautiful music. Only the wolf cub was still irritated and eating food, chewing and biting furiously. "Shut up!" Suddenly, Gu Yin snorted loudly and shot a deadly beam of energy towards the wolf cub. The wolf cub was eating earnestly with full dedication, but his reaction was not slow. He immediately jumped to one side and dodged the attack, then shouted, "You fucker! How dare you attack me?" Yi Shiwen obviously did not like what just happened and glared at Gu Yin. Indeed, this attack was meant to kill the wolf cub, and Yi Shiwen wouldn't let go so easily. This dog has attained wisdom? Still, it is so insolent. Gu Yin never imagined that the wolf cub would start talking all of a sudden, and neither did he expect to receive this kind of reply from a demon beast pet. "You are a dog. Your whole family is made up of dogs." The wolf cub was furious and roared at Gu Yin. Gu Yin's complexion suddenly turned gloomy as he looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "Youngie, are you the one who has trained this dog? I must say you have done a terrible job. This dog has no manners. I am trying to say that you have failed in training it properly. If you cannot even train a dog, why don't let me help you?" "You fucker. No one would dare train this prince. I shall train your sorry ass instead." The wolf cub refused to admit being inferior. Well, he never was a well-mannered beast in the first place. Humph! Yun Gu snorted and once again shot an enormous beam of light towards him. However, before the wolf cub could react, Yi Shiwen appeared in front of him, like teleportation in general, and caught that beam of light in his hand. What happened? Now, suddenly you want to protect this dog? Gu Yin looked annoyed as he said. He was obviously not satisfied with Yi Zaiwen's interference. "You are a dog, you bastard!" The wolf cub shouted again. If Yi Shiwen had not come in front of him, he would have already torn this son of a bitch to pieces. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Protect? You're wrong. I don't need to protect him. To be honest, I did protect you from getting torn apart, and that is because I wanted to ask you for an explanation as to why would you suddenly attack him. He is too noisy, that's why." Gu Yin put on a serious face and said, "So, in your opinion, he is noisy. Very well, then in my opinion, you are too noisy." Yi Shiwen smirked, then immediately rushed towards Gu Yin like a fired bullet, producing a buzzing sound. Yi Zaiwen's skin turned golden, and his palm went forward, releasing an endless golden beam of light towards Gu Yin. "Hey, you too!" Chu Jinkai stood up and was about to mediate between the two, but suddenly felt a strong aura stubbornly pressing him. It belonged to Li Fei. Li Fei slightly smiled and said, "Brother Chu, why do you look so worried? You should just relax and watch the show. I also want to see the level of one of the strongest experts of the Southeast region." Chu Jinkai was about to enter into a panicked state, but suddenly Chi Fifan communicated via Soul Search and said, "Don't be so anxious. It is difficult to say who will win the fight." Out of all of these people present here, only Chi Fifan had the best understanding of how Yi Shiwen generally operated in situations like this. He knew that Yi Shiwen would never engage an enemy he couldn't defeat. Not to mention, Yi Zaiwen's fights always tend to defy logic, as he had a track record of defeating opponents of much higher levels. Chu Jinkai sat down and began to watch the fight. However, he was preparing to intervene, just in case the fight went out of hand and someone's life was in danger. After all, he was a legendary level expert, and it was his responsibility as the host as well. The true disciples were also watching the battle and were secretly pleased in their hearts that Yi Shiwen was teaching that arrogant prick a lesson. Although there were a lot of people who were not accustomed to seeing Yi Shiwen in battle, they could clearly sense his great power and skills. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was representing Yi Yuan School in this battle, or perhaps the entire 10 countries of the Southeast region. Gu Yin was the favored disciple of TMU. The reputation of the entire Southeast region was at stake here. Humph! Gu Yin also shot a beam of light towards the incoming golden beam attack. The two attacks collided in midair and led to a massive explosion, while the very next instant, Gu Yin's fist arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. This was the first time Yi Zaiwen's attack was so easily resolved. Having produced such a powerful disciple, Tianmu was indeed worthy of its title. Yi Zaiwen's dragon claw clashed with the dark cloud attack of Gu Yin and led to another explosion. Boom! The aftermath of this explosion was so terrifying that it broke through the barrier of space and spread out in all directions. Chu Jingkai immediately used a world law to fix the broken space and contain the aftermath of this explosion with a barrier. The true disciples looked scared and knew that Chu Jingkai had just now saved their lives. Although they were also in the same realm as Yi Shiwen and Gu Yin, the gap was huge between ordinary true disciples and the experts at Complete Truth Realm. Bang! The next collision caused shock waves that hit viciously against the barrier and shook it to its core. The upper portion of the full moon peak, along with surrounding space, was immediately sent into oblivion. To be continued. Chapter 278. Chapter 278. Let me crush your arrogance. The complementary shock waves were still sweeping across the area. No one would have imagined that the battle between two true disciples could be this terrifying. Gu Yin's eyes flashed. Even he did not expect Yi Shiwen to grab his fist attack. Even an expert of Complete Truth Realm should not have been able to stop this attack, let alone Yi Shiwen. Hoot! Gu Yin cried loud and long and moved forward like a streamer of light. His fist was wrapped in an inexhaustible divine light which instantly exploded to the size of a mountain and pounded down towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, without showing any hesitation, stuck his hand out and it instantly turned into a dragon claw and greeted the incoming attack. Boom! The two attacks collided fiercely and set off waves of rippling light and shock waves in the surroundings. Gu Yin was very strong. No wonder he was so rampant, but Yi Zaiwen's facial expression showed no change whatsoever. He once again went all out. His left palm summoned a golden coiling dragon, whereas his right palm wreaked havoc by summoning a tyrannical attack like Hans Seal. Hans Seal instantly transformed into a gigantic mountain high in the sky. Then, it suddenly dropped down towards Gu Yin. Both these attacks were unparalleled ancient martial art techniques. Yi Shiwen instantly routed Gu Yin's fist attack. Gu Yin had to jump back several steps to steer away from the range of these tyrannical attacks. There was no way he could possibly stand a chance against ancient mystical techniques. However, he recovered quickly and certainly couldn't allow Yi Shiwen to attack incessantly. He immediately punched towards Yi Shiwen, and suddenly it seemed as if the sky itself would shatter into pieces. This was really a horrifying fist attack and couldn't be taken lightly. A large area of the sky appeared to be collapsing as the Quan Jin spread across the sky and began to bombard wantonly in all directions. NT, Quan Jin fist power. Yi Shiwen used his right hand to make some strange gestures, as if he was turning the pages of a book, and suddenly Hans Seal fell down right upon the Quan Jin and completely annihilated it. It seemed as if the law of the earth itself was condensed into the Hans Seal. Gu Yin's Quan Jin did not withstand the unimaginable weight contained in the Hans Seal and directly collapsed. After the Hans Seal smashed Quan Jin, it further went towards Gu Yin at an incredibly fast speed, like a falling meteor. Bang! The dropping Hans Seal was just like a sierra falling from the sky, and it pounded heavily upon him. Poof! Gu Yin spurted out blood, and his body was blasted away horizontally due to the massive impact. How dare you injure me? Gu Yin roared like a crazed beast. His cries of horror shot up into the sky and resounded everywhere. Gu Yin adjusted his unbalanced posture in midair, then immediately rushed forward and arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. The speed granted to him by his agility technique was unimaginably fast. In a blink of an eye, a giant fist blasted towards Yi Shiwen. His attack speed was really outstanding. Gu Yin's agility skill was approaching near perfection. If Yi Shiwen did not use devil wings, he would barely be able to keep up. Having such confidence and arrogance was indeed not without a reason, and perhaps his future achievements would actually be immeasurable. Is that all you got? Yi Shiwen sneered and activated Tyrant Body Technique, instantly maneuvered his palm to greet the incoming attack. Even though Gu Yin was incredibly fast, this couldn't act as an advantage as he was still unable to hurt Yi Shiwen. Boom! 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 The two sides continued to clash one after another, and that caused the space to collapse again and again. These two are very strong, will surely reach legendary realm in the near future. Huang Luoqin was amazed by the level of this battle and the potential demonstrated by Yi Shiwen and Gu Yin, even though it was only a truth-level battle. I never thought that the southeast region can produce such a master. To think he is actually able to fight on equal terms with Gu Yin. I guess he is not that bad of a choice as a potential candidate for the status of Team U disciple. Li Fei was somewhat amazed by Yi Zaiwen's potential, but there was still a hidden punch in his tone. This is insane. No matter how much he tries, his attacks are simply unable to hurt Yi Shiwen. Yes, indeed, Gu Yin has already tried so many times, but is failing to land one effective hit on Yi Shiwen. But similarly, Yi Shiwen is unable to catch up with Gu Yin's speed. Their individual advantages are canceling out each other, making it difficult for one party to gain an upper hand in battle. Is this the best you can do? Don't tell me this is the standard of TMU's treasured disciples. Yi Shiwen sneered while activating Tyrant Body Technique at its maximum. He had not even resorted to using gilded tyrant form so far. Han seals smashed down one after another, while Gu Yin did not dare to block them. He had come to understand the frightening power of these seals, and knew that it was for his own good to stay away from them at any cost. Humph! So a little boy is trying to talk big, I see. Even if I cannot hurt you, you also can never expect to hurt me. Gu Yin said loudly with a stern look on his face. He still couldn't bring himself to acknowledge Yi Zaiwen's tyrannical strength. Yi Shiwen was a peerless genius of the southeast region, but was still just another genius and nothing more. He, on the other hand, thought of himself as a special disciple of TMU, thereby holding a much superior status than Yi Shiwen. However, he had already discovered the terror of Yi Shiwen by now. It was too difficult to injure Yi Zaiwen's invincible body as none of his attacks worked so far. He was somewhat aggrieved because all he could do during the battle was use fast speed to dodge Yi Zaiwen's attacks. He truly never excelled in offensive battle strategy. Instead, he relied more on his speed to defeat his opponents. But unlike most of his opponents, Yi Shiwen not only possessed an unparalleled body as an ultimate form of defense, but also possessed an ultimate offense type, secret technique, Han seal. If Yi Shiwen was faster than him, then he wouldn't have survived this long in battle. Was it really possible for a genius like Yi Shiwen to appear in a small place like Southeast region? Is that so? Yi Shiwen smirked as he felt a sudden urge of defeating his opponent thoroughly to an extent of leaving them completely disheartened and dejected. A pair of golden devil wings appeared behind Yi Shiwen all of a sudden. His imposing aura instantly exploded in all directions like a majestic, boundless sea. Shwa! Yi Zaiwen's body suddenly blurred and disappeared from the spot where he was standing just now. What is this magical power? How is he so fast? The true disciples immediately lost the trail of Yi Shiwen. Their eyes just couldn't follow Yi Shiwen, who was moving at such an incredibly fast speed that it felt as if he vanished. Even Qi Fifan and the other half-step legendary level experts were shocked by Yi Zaiwen's speed. They never expected that his speed would be enhanced so dramatically by a pair of wings. Not to mention, these wings also worked towards neutralizing Gu Yin's only advantage, giving an edge to Yi Shiwen in this battle. There was a look of disbelief on Li Fei's face as he was watching Yi Zaiwen's magical speed, which was much faster than Gu Yin's. In this case, Yi Shiwen was holding all the advantages at the moment, and Gu Yin was now in a serious situation where neither fight nor flight was an option. Li Fei was all set to stop this battle immediately, but suddenly a strong coercion firmly suppressed him, making him immobile. At this time, Chu Jinkai's voice entered his ears. "Young Li, why do you look so anxious? Relax, just sit back and enjoy the show. I also want to see the true strength of a young genius from TMU." Li Fei's complexion suddenly paled when he was greeted by his own words, and that too in a similar fashion. Not to mention, the meaning hidden in these words was quite obvious. Chu Jinkai finished the sentence and immediately felt a joyous feeling in his heart. Now that he was finally able to vent his anger, Yi Shiwen suddenly started to appear more pleasing to the eye. Bang! There came a loud noise. A human figure was kicked out in midair. It was Gu Yin who had been overtaken and kicked by Yi Shiwen. This kick was strong enough to send him flying right towards the ground. He crashed heavily on the ground, making a big crater almost instantly. He immediately spurted a mouthful of blood while there was an incredible look in his eyes. This should not be happening. Gu Yin seemed confused, completely overtaken by deniability. He just couldn't accept the fact that Yi Zaiwen's speed surpassed his own. But he was not willing to give up so easily and immediately used his best fist attack. However, Yi Zaiwen's face was expressionless as he was looking calmly at Gu Yin. Suddenly, a Han seal smashed down from the sky and hit Gu Yin directly from above. Boom! Gu Yin was smashed on the ground, making a human-shaped hole in the ground. Damn, Gu Yin was unable to dodge one attack, and look what happened to him. Good, well done. That idiot was trampled to death. The fucker had it coming. The wolf cub clamored in a loud voice and looked quite satisfied. From the very start, Gu Yin was nothing more than an arrogant bastard who was simply an eyesore for everyone. The true disciples were literally speechless when they heard the wolf cub's comment. They did not know where Yi Shiwen found this weird beast, but no one dared to question Yi Shiwen or his judgment. Gu Yin's speed was already approaching the ultimate level of Truth Realm, but the wolf cub was able to dodge his attack so easily. This alone was enough to establish one fact, that the wolf cub was stronger than them. These TMU disciples are nothing but mediocre. They do not deserve to be associated with legendary TMU, to be honest. Yi Shiwen smirked, then turned away. Gu Yin was really powerful, therefore he was so full of himself. Any other disciple of same level definitely wouldn't stand a chance against Yi Shiwen. In fact, at present, Yi Shiwen had enough strength to defeat anyone in the Truth Realm. Li Fei's complexion was pale, but did not have the means to act because Chu Jinkai was blocking his path. Although he was very strong, was still nothing in comparison to a legendary level expert. Yi Shiwen did not turn back to look and left the scene along with the wolf cub. To be continued. Chapter 279. Chapter 279. Time to try another method. The news about the battle between Yi Shiwen and Gu Yin quickly spread in Yiyuan School, especially through the networks of those true disciples who were all in favor of Yi Shiwen and held intense hatred towards Gu Yin. Although they did not have the strength to teach Gu Yin a lesson, this job was fairly and properly done by Yi Shiwen. They were quite satisfied from the outcome, in which Gu Yin was completely thrashed by Yi Shiwen. Their individual perceptions of Yi Shiwen did not matter much, as this incident was enough to override all those pre-existing perceptions. Now, the entire community of true disciples felt grateful to Yi Shiwen for doing what he did. At this time, Yi Shiwen was one of them and Gu Yin was an outsider, and they were going to stand beside Yi Shiwen no matter what. At this time, Li Fei's ashen face was visible to them all and making them feel proud and victorious in a way. They were the prestigious true disciples of Yiyuan School and would certainly feel proud when one of their own defeated an outsider who was trying to look down on them and their sect. Of course, Li Fei's ancestor used to be a disciple of Yi Yuan school, but that did not mean that he could look down upon Yi Yuan school, and that too in their presence. Did you see that? Gu Yin did not stand a chance against Yi Shiwen and was completely trampled underfoot. That is how you crush someone's arrogance. Yes, true disciples of TMU are nothing but mediocre pricks. I don't see a reason why they are so arrogant. I assume that Gu Yin is not really a big shot in TMU. I guess he is just a janitor disciple with a gross, arrogant demeanor. But we are talking about TMU guys. Although Gu Yin was so easily defeated by Yi Shiwen, we must not forget that Yi Shiwen is really too strong. In just 2 years after joining Yi Yuan school, he is the first disciple in the history of our sect who has progressed so insanely. He is a rare evildoer monster that appears once in a millennium. Indeed, I have also heard from several fellow true disciples that Gu Yin is truly fierce. If his opponent wasn't Yi Shiwen, then any other disciple wouldn't have survived this battle. Yes, Yi Zaiwen's speed of growth is monstrous, to be precise. Moreover, I heard that these 2 men came to Yi Yuan school in order to check the qualifications of worthy disciples and recruit them into TMU. But Yi Shiwen has ended up making them angry. I wonder what will happen now. I hope this will not affect the recruitment process. Yi Yuan school disciples were discussing among themselves. Anyway, this matter about TMU didn't really concern them in this lifetime, so they could discuss freely as much as they want. However, the matter quickly changed its form and caught everyone's attention when the news went out that Yi Zaiwen's name was not present in the list of disciples selected for TMU. The news spread like wildfire in Yi Yuan school and detonated bombs of dissatisfaction everywhere. It was quite obvious that the representatives of Yi Yuan school used their administrative powers to redress personal grievances, which spread discontentment among disciples. However, regarding this matter, which basically concerned only Yi Shiwen, neither the top brass of Yi Yuan school nor Li Fei made an attempt to give any response or clarification. Inside the main hall of Qinyu Peak Palace, "You were too impulsive this time." Yi Feng sighed and looked at his stubborn younger brother, who was so eager to go to TMU earlier but ended up creating such a trouble. Now, he might not have a way to join TMU. That bastard went too far. What happened was necessary. The wolf cub said with indignation, and still hadn't gotten over the way he was looked down upon by the opposite party. Yi Shiwen did not say anything, but also believed that what happened was necessary and just. Now what will you do? How are you planning to join TMU? Yi Feng asked. Rest assured, I will go for the other method. I will just go for the bottom level assessment and win my way up to the top. Yi Shiwen said in a very calm and casual manner. In fact, there were 2 ways to enter TMU. One was to impress the representatives sent by TMU and enjoy the backdoor entry. But only a selected few could enjoy such privilege. Not to mention, a pre-established connection with TMU was necessary for this method. However, even these so-called selected individuals were required to go through an assessment process, though only to differentiate them in different ranks according to their potential and strength. A lot of people were usually not lucky enough to have some kind of connection with TMU, and their only option was to opt for the second way, to participate in a competitive assessment from the very bottom and win their way up to the very top. However, the difficulty was also much larger, and more than 95% contestants usually faced elimination before reaching the semis. Since the first way was now closed for Yi Shiwen, his only option was to go for competitive assessment. He was aware that this kind of assessment was going to be much more intense and brutal than expected, and he might have to kill his way through countless geniuses to reach the top. Although most of his competitors were going to come from small clans or sects, this did not mean that they would go down very easily. In fact, there were several records of peerless martial geniuses arising from small sections. Yi Shiwen was not disappointed. Rather, he was more excited to be taking part in the competition and also looking forward to it. Getting a backdoor entry was no fun to begin with. He was actually looking forward to gaining loads of battle experience in the imminent, brutal fights. If there were going to be endless obstacles in his path, he would pave his own path out of blood and perseverance by virtue of his own hands in order to reach his goal. Not to mention, he still had mysterious space as well as Yumo's help. There was nothing that could stop him from moving forward. After 2 weeks, the team of selected disciples finally left for TMU. In addition to Huang Luoqin, Qi Fifan, and Xueyan Luo, Hua Menghan also went to TMU unexpectedly, along with about a dozen of true disciples. In other words, the entire elite disciple force of Yi Yuan School was taken away by TMU's representatives. Fortunately, Yi Yuan School wasn't the only major sect that had to lose its elite disciples. A large number of elites from other major sects also went to TMU. Out of the 6 pro-disciples of Yi Yuan School, now, only 2 were left, namely Chu Jinkai and Yi Shiwen. However, this outcome had a good effect on Qinyu faction's growth, as everyone wanted to be a part of the remaining pro-disciples factions. Since it was quite difficult to enter Chu Jinkai's faction, Qinyu faction became the most ideal faction to join, considering Yi Zaiwen's rise to fame and his newly earned title as the strongest disciple in the younger generation. Yi Zaiwen's excellent performance as a representative of Yi Yuan School, while saving Yi Yuan School's prestige and dignity from arrogant representatives of TMU, also made him a youth icon and the most adored disciple in no time. However, the departure of these elites had a slight impact on Yi Yuan School's overall available combat force, particularly in this era of Bai Mojiao's rebellion. Bai Mojiao was a cunning organization and had largely taken into account TMU's recruitment process and the imminent lack of elite disciples. It was a good opportunity for staging a rebellion. A month's time quickly passed, and since Bai Mojiao seemed to know that all major forces had sent their elite disciples to TMU, the degree of their rebellion increased significantly. Yi Shiwen even had to go himself to wipe out some of the rebelling Bai Mojiao big shots. Now, there were only 2 pro-disciples left in the sect. Chu Jinkai had to go to the depths of Yi Yuan School to deal with a variety of administrative matters, so only Yi Shiwen could be dispatched in emergency situations. Whenever some Bai Mojiao-related missions were far beyond the capability of ordinary true disciples, only then Yi Shiwen was asked to move into action. There were only a handful of half-step legendary disciples in the 5 major sects, adding up to a dozen at most, but now all of a sudden they were all gone. This put pressure on the remaining elite disciples. Since Chu Jinkai was ready to take over the title of next sect head, Yi Shiwen suddenly became a leading figure for the younger generation. During this month, Yi Shiwen exterminated over 20 Bai Mojiao strongholds and rose to fame in the entire Great Yu State. On this day, the cloudless blue sky, as if laundered excessively to the point of flawless cleanness, was spread to infinity in all directions. Yi Shiwen was traveling on a rainbow while his hands were crossed behind his back. Even if his current strength was comparable to complete Truth Realm, the extermination of Bai Mojiao strongholds was getting more and more strenuous for him, because Bai Mojiao was calling more and more of its best members to deal with a threat like Yi Shiwen. Now, even Yi Shiwen had come to realize that he could not continue to wait any longer. It was time to have a breakthrough. After exterminating more than 20 Bai Mojiao strongholds, he seized a lot of resources, including more than 50,000 Lingdan, which were enough to serve his accumulation requirements. The breakthrough time was approaching closer. Yi Zaiwen's inner state was already at a sufficient level thanks to devouring knowledge in bulk in the library. So, as long as he could get his hands on enough energy, breakthrough shouldn't be a difficult task for him. Not to mention, he had not completely absorbed one of the 2 zombie cores in the library and was saving it for the next breakthrough. All these resources were enough to send him directly from the Truth 8th Peak to complete Truth Realm in one fell swoop. Then his combat efficiency would have a rapid and qualitative change, making it possible for him to contend with half-step legendary experts. By that time, he would surely reach the pinnacle of Truth Realm, and the next step would be reaching the half-step legendary realm. However, his accumulation was not enough to step into half-step legendary realm. In order to compete with other contenders in TMU's assessment examination, he must step into half-step legendary realm and seemed confident as well. To be continued. Chapter 280. NT. Thanks to Curtis Losh, U.S. for sponsoring this chapter. Sorry, Curtis, for the 3 days delay. I was busy sorting things out on my end. I will make sure to more than compensate by releasing thrice the number of sponsored chapters you were expecting me to do. Chapter 280, Devil Cavalry Yishuin returned to Yuan School and immediately began the closed-door training. His aura rushed from Truth 8th stage to complete Truth Realm, granting tremendous changes to his battle efficiency. Yi Shiwen had commanded, not allowing anyone to disturb him. In fact, even if there was some urgent task, no one was allowed to disturb him. The value of Yi Shiwen was soon going to reflect in the future, bringing in enormous benefits for Yuan School in various forms. He was phenomenal in his actions of eliminating several Baimajiao strongholds, and this was quite a big task. After all, this mission was something not even the Taiheng elders could succeed in doing so easily. Another month passed quickly, and Baimajiao activities got increasingly frequent. They also began to attack major cities. 5 major forces put more intensity in their efforts to exterminate Baimajiao forces. However, Baimajiao suddenly quieted down while facing that. It was just like the calm before a storm. On this day, the infinitely cloudy sky, like a relentless army general, suddenly roared, and Yuan School's main gate was shaken up. A thrill of horror swept away several mountain peaks, and it seemed as if many sierras, located in the front region of Yuan School's campus, instantly collapsed after encountering a doomsday-like scenario. The Zhan barrier circle was also destroyed in a blink of an eye. The surrounding space was torn apart like a velvet carpet, and a gigantic devil claw suddenly stretched out to grab a mountain peak. Boom! The mountain peak was grasped and instantly crushed into pieces. Hundreds of disciples were also grasped along with the mountain peak and were crushed to death. Who is that? Who dares to attack our Yuan School? A voice filled with fury originated from the depths of Yuan School and echoed like a momentary sonic boom. Yuan School, this sect of yours has been standing strong for thousands of years, but it is time to put an end to its glory. A loud voice sounded from the other side of the crack in space. A gigantic hand instantly appeared in the sky, sweeping an area stretched over the radius of 100 kilometers in one fell swoop. What a joke! The voice originating from the depths of Yuan School sneered, and a rippling sword key suddenly cut through the barrier of space and collided with that big hand. Boom! That big hand was chopped down instantly into pieces and turned into an endless amount of qi, sweeping across in all directions. However, right then, a tall specter appeared from the crack. His whole body was enveloped in dreadful machi that was distorting the air. People could not see his face, but his eyes were shining brightly like 2 big red lanterns. NT. Machi equals Devilki, a terrifying aura scattered in all directions with his body at the center. Sage Realm. This devil is at Sage Realm. NT. Sage Realm equals Saint Realm equals Sacred Realm equals Holy Realm. Requesting readers, help to choose one. It is basically the realm above Legendary Realm. Yuan School's disciples despaired as they discovered this specter's real level. Everyone knew that the strength of Sage Realm was terrifying and basically out of their comprehension. The Legendary Realm was just for legendary characters, and those characters were still bound to the mortal realm in one way or the other. However, after stepping into the Sage Realm, one would actually transcend the mortal world and witness major changes in one's body and soul. This was the so-called rising above the mundane life of mortals and entering the world of sages. A horrifying scene was unfolding in front of everyone. A large rift in the space ended up becoming a portal for Devil Army and Baimajiao disciples to rush into this world. They were riding abominable creatures called magical beasts and invading Yuan School in abundance. Various beastly roared filled the sky as hundreds of thousands of devils and Baimajiao disciples captured the skyline. This time Baimajiao's tyrannical forces had shown up incisively. How can they have so many soldiers? This is insane. Baimajiao has gathered an outrageous number of devil soldiers. This doesn't tally with the information we obtained, damn it. A disciple roared to express his frustration. Although in the hearts of these disciples, Baimajiao was considered as a formidable organization. However, it had been in a situation of extermination for quite some time. They never imagined that even after facing grand-scale extermination, Baimajiao could gather such an insane army. There was a creepy feeling about this. A feeling of chill greeted their hearts as they continued to stare at the scene unfolding in front of their eyes. Hundreds of thousands of mighty devil cavalry soldiers were going on a conquest, heading straight in the direction of Yi Yuan School. Some timid disciples were instantly scared to death. A crowd of elders and true disciples also went up into the sky, while other disciples put all their energy into dealing with the devil soldiers on the ground. Yi Yuan School's disciples and elders were going all out. They put their lives on the life. After all, Yi Yuan School was their home that they must protect at any cost. A barrage of disciples came rushing out of the depths of Yi Yuan School and jumped into the fight without any hesitation. They were not prepared for this battle, while devil cavalry was rushing to the front. One tall devil was sitting atop a scary magical beast and leading the cavalry. He looked very grim and was on the verge of going berserk any time now. Bang! The two sides crashed into each other in midair, causing numerous casualties on both sides almost instantly. Pucci! Several disciples ran directly into the spears held by devil soldiers. It seemed as if string-like spears passed through several bead-like meatballs in a blink of an eye, unfolding a bloody scene in the sky and on the battlefield. This was an extremely bloody picture, but no one had the time to think about all that. There was no turning back, no one thought of retreating now. Rather, they raged even more and went all out. Team after team of devil soldiers were coming out from the rift in space and rushing to attack Yi Yuan School. Boom! Human disciples with swords formed teams and rushed forward to greet the incoming devil cavalry. They joined forces and summoned up a wall of sword ki, and somehow became successful in repelling the devil teams. Both sides were fighting to kill and making every effort to kill each other. This was a great event and would spread to become an immortal legend. Yi Yuan School had been standing tall for thousands of years, but this was the first time someone launched a direct attack on it. This was something that had never been seen before, so the disciples were somewhat confused. However, it seemed like now their wills were firmer than ever before. This was their home. Hence, escape or retreat was not an option. Ancient Gen laws were activated and disciples got to see the true power of Yi Yuan School. These laws had stayed buried for hundreds of thousands of years for a tactical deployment such as this. Several devil soldiers rushed into them and were turned to ashes. Shoot! Someone shouted from the devil side, and immediately devil soldiers took out their bows and shot a barrage of magical arrows into the sky. Obscuring the sky for an instant, then the arrows fell down towards the human disciples. Ah! 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 The rain of magical arrows fell upon the disciples and directly harvested the souls from their bodies. Followed by painful screams, countless disciples lost their lives. Counterattack! The senior expert shouted from the depths of Yi Yuan School, and at this time, an ancient matrix formation began to launch a massive attack, absorbing all of Lingqi in the air instantly. Rumble! Rumble! Almost in a blink of an eye, an inexhaustible black dragon appeared in the clouds and glittered violently, followed by huge electric snake creeping inside the dark clouds, and then it fell down, forming a sea of lightning. Numerous devil soldiers and Baimajiao disciples were burned alive by the power of this lightning attack. Countless devil soldiers were burned to crisp in this sea of lightning. This was a clash between two tyrannical forces, and every moment claimed a lot of lives from both sides. The terrible collisions were stirring up the meat sauce and a river of blood on the battlefield. Dreadful Machi seemed monstrous and was rising up to 100 miles into the sky. Several ancient laws were being activated to tackle this problem, but their resurrection was going to take time. Meanwhile, Yuan School's disciples were losing their lives left and right because their battle efficiency was nothing in comparison to that of the frightening war freaks like the devils. For a while, the human disciples were on defense and were being constantly defeated. Hundreds of thousands of devil soldiers attacked at once. Boom! But suddenly, a divine beam rushed out from the depths of Yuan School and swept out, annihilating an entire platoon of devil cavalry in one fell swoop. A huge war fortress flew out from the depths of Yuan School. It was actually the mountain peak gifted to a true disciple and held tremendous firepower. It was equipped with all sorts of matrix methods and immediately unleashed numerous attacks on the devil army. One after another, several war fortresses flew out and obscured the sky. The flying war fortresses began to launch a variety of magical attacks, endless beams lasing in the direction of devil army and causing explosions. The devil army faced numerous casualties after the sudden appearance of war fortresses. The flying war fortresses made an impenetrable defense line in the sky, and on the ground as well, and successfully managed to block the advancement of devil cavalry. Bang! At this time, a thundering sound resounded everywhere along with a storm originating from the crack in space. Then a huge figure, several hundred meters tall in height, jumped out of the crack and landed in this world. War monster! War monster! The sharp-eyed disciples immediately recognized this creature. This was the infamous war monster of the devil army, tall like a mountain. It tore its way out of the crack in space, and its frightening existence finally appeared in their world. It was carrying a crooked smile on its face as it gazed at the tiny and inconsequential human experts while revealing its sharp fangs. To be continued. NT. I disappeared due to some IRL health issues, but am back for good. Would like to thank readers for waiting patiently. Chapter 281. NT. First compensation chapter. 2 more compensation chapters to go before resuming regular releases. Chapter 281. Old Sect had the terrifying war monster trampled forward, and with a single step it shook the ground beneath and sliced the air around. The long stretches of mountains were crumbled with its mighty sweep. Bang! The war monster collided with the war fortress. The most dreadful war machines of both the parties crashed into each other mercilessly. Bang! The devil cavalries, which were spread around within a few miles' range, were obliterated by the sweeping swordki. At this time, a skinny and slender figure appeared from the depths of Yuan School. His whole face was wrinkled, and he was somewhat limping as well. The facial features of this slender figure suggested that the man was very old. The identity of the old man was a mystery for all the disciples who were looking at him. There were whispers amidst them, suggesting he might be a senior who was in a hideaway for a long time. Isn't this our old sect head that was in charge 1,000 years ago? A sharp-eyed disciple recognized all of a sudden. Hearing this moved the disciples and brought tears to their eyes, for there was no one in Yuan School who did not know and respect this powerful leader. This old person used to be the sect head of Yuan School until 2 generations ago and was very much a legendary figure among all the sect heads. However, more than 1,000 years ago, when Yuan School was surrounded by an enormous crisis, at that time, an ancient treasure trove was discovered and a large number of Yuan experts entered it. But afterward an accident occurred and they failed to come back. During this unstable time of Yuan School, the inheritance and the human resource accumulated over a span of 10,000 years was about to get cut off in a flash. But in this time of distress, the old head marched into the east and the west and defeated countless enemies. He finally stabilized Yuan School and restored its strength and vitality. He reinstated Yuan School back to the ranks of 5 major forces. However, the expeditions which lasted for several hundred years exhausted his vitality, and everyone thought that he wouldn't be able to die peacefully in a sitting posture. However, since then, the old head disappeared without a trace, and everyone thought that he really died in a sitting posture. NT. Dying in a sitting posture is a Buddhist practice and is considered sacred. It is the only way to stop oneself from turning into a zombie after death. Unexpectedly, the old head reappeared in the most crucial time, once again to save Yuan School. He was the respectable elder from 1,000 years ago who saved Yuan School. No wonder everyone respected him to the utmost. The old head's stature was arched, and his face was densely covered with age spots. It appeared as if life was just about to leave his body, and it was definite that his survival was supported by his willingness and willpower to seek a breakthrough into the sage realm. Those expeditions had exposed his body to many hidden dangers, and now it felt that end of his life was approaching. The arrival of the old head sent a wave of hope amongst the people of Yuan School. Even the spectre did not dare to deride the old head and looked at him with solemn respect, as if not daring to underestimate this old man's strength. The presence of the old head had lifted the spirits of the Yuan people. However, the war had not ended yet. Several devils were still coming in, and Yuan disciples were on the verge of retreat. This was a terrifying, slaughtering feast. If this had been a one-on-one battle, then Yuan disciples would have been invincible, but now hundreds of thousands were at war. Amidst the flowing rivers of blood, Yuan ancestors feared the danger of eradication. Everyone had to do their utmost and fight. There was no choice. Old guy, it is evident that you are severely injured. If you want to continue to prolong your own life with that turtle breath technique of yours, you can still survive for another 100 years. Still you want to die? The spectre gave a cold look to the old head and said, he was also in the sage realm like the old head, but the injury the old head had survived earlier was too grave and had limited his martial life to only vital practices. If he was to participate in a war, his death was certain. So what if you have brought hundreds of thousands of devil soldiers? You still cannot win against my Yuan School, Kiki. The old head coughed a few times, and fresh blood was thrown into the air. Old head. Yuan disciples burst out in concern, worried about his condition. I have fought innumerable opponents. The only thing missing was fighting the devil cavalry, Kiki. The old man coughed again and spoke. Well, it seems your last wish is to die. I will grant it gladly. The spectre replied in a cold voice. Although he was not much interested in this severely wounded old man, he had brought this many devil soldiers to destroy Yuan School, and certainly wouldn't allow anyone to stand in his way. Anyone who would try to stand in his way must die. The spectre swept his long spear and released a devil technique that looked just like a devilish dragon, rushing towards the old head. The skinny stature of the old head seemed like a small boat being hit by wild waves in the raging tides. He suddenly pulled out his firm sword and released a sword key horizontally towards the incoming attack. Bang! The terrifying collision collapsed a piece of space. The dark crack in space looked quite frightening. The forces on both sides suffered heavy losses after the first collision. Clang! The long sword in the old head's hand behaved just like a black dragon. It instantly roared out and clashed with the devilish dragon. The collision produced an endless wave of energy boom which filled the horizon. The collisions between the shards of sword light and spear shadows obscured the sky. Cough! The old head coughed out blood, but his facial expression was firm and resolute. His forehead was wrapped around with the air of death, and it seemed as if the next moment he would really drop dead. Even in such a dire situation, he was relentless, and his attacks were fierce. The Yuan disciples were sobbing as they knew that the real cost of this fight was his vitality and life force. The spectre, at this moment, shoved his machi directly into the devilish dragon, which then fired a magical beam towards the old head from its mouth. The old head charged forward and slashed it with his sword key. The sword key was torn into shreds by the devilish dragon. It then roared and rumbled into the old head's body. Bang! The old head was flown away. His skinny body went flying into the mountain peak, which was then directly severed due to the impact. Old head! Yuan disciples called out in alarm and started weeping bitterly. Our top experts, Taizhong elders, where are they? Some disciples were confused because, at such a critical time, they did not know where the Yuan elders were, and why would they not come out to support the old head, who was struggling at the moment. Today we will crush Yuan school, and then go on to trample other major forces of Great Yu State. We will conquer this land and turn it into a devil bridgehead. The specter roared and said, Kill these devil bastards. We cannot let the devil race step into our territory. Yes, kill these devil bastards. One of the Yuan disciples roared. The danger of eradication was in front of them, and no matter what usual hatred existed among them, today they had to fight united. There were more than 100,000 disciples in Yuan school, and all of them simultaneously unleashed themselves onto the devil army. Boom! Suddenly, there was a huge burst of sound followed by instant evaporation of many devil cavalries into blood fog. It was a golden figure that, like a golden ray of light, had rushed into the formations of devil soldiers. A terrifying aura swept away as the golden light condensed into a dragon, and in a flash, dozens of devil soldiers were killed with just one bang. The golden trail came together and took form of a person whose whole body dazzled like a golden war god. It's Brother Yi. Brother Yi is here. He has finally come. Yuan disciples cheered, and their morale rose up suddenly. Although Yuan school had many powerful masters, some even more powerful than Yi Shiwen, but they were from the older generation and not the same generation as Yi Shiwen and the other pro-disciples. Now, Yi Shiwen was the only active pro-disciple left in the sect, and these disciples could relate to him in a way they couldn't with the powerhouses of the older generation. Yi Shiwen was one of the 6 pro-disciples, an iconic young expert who was also at the helm of younger generation. His appearance in the battlefield was more than enough to boost the morale of disciples. You all need not be anxious. The head and the elders will soon come over. Yi Shiwen roared, and a thundering voice spread through the battlefield. Yuan disciples were no longer worried. After all, these were Yi Zaiwen's words and had a natural persuasive power. Yi Shiwen summoned Han's Han seal, which got bigger and bigger in the sky and instantly slammed down, killing hundreds of devil soldiers in a blink of an eye. Yi Shiwen appeared callous. His body was covered with golden divinity, radiating rays of golden light in the surroundings. He was just like a tyrannical god of war, ominously glaring like a predator. This time, Yi Zaiwen's fighting strength had risen all the way, breaking from Truth Realm to half-step Legendary Realm. After more than a month of closed-door training, Yi Shiwen skipped Truth 9th stage and directly reached complete Truth Realm in a single breakthrough. Yi Shiwen, I did not expect to meet you here. I remember the last time you ruined our plans, but today will mark the day of your death. A familiar voice sounded from one side. Yi Shiwen shifted his gaze, only to find Lu Hongwei holding a magical sword in his hand and looking at him with a murderous look in his eyes. To be continued. Chapter 282. NT, Second Compensation Chapter. One more to go before resuming regular releases. Chapter 282 Fight with Lu Hongwei Yi Shiwen. This time I will kill you mercilessly and also destroy Yuan school. Lu Hongwei gave a murderous look to Yi Shiwen. His left arm didn't seem like a normal arm. Instead, it was a devil arm which was brimming with energy. He detested Yi Shiwen. If not for Yi Shiwen, he would not be so embarrassed. And because of this, he must kill Yi Shiwen to satisfy his obsession. Yi Shiwen had ruined his plans on Chenji Island, giving prior warning to Yuan school and the other major forces about Bai Mojiao's approaching raid. This was not a hidden matter, and everyone knew about Yi Zaiwen's role in that incident. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, Your century-old dream of destroying Yuan school shall never be fulfilled. Several 100,000 devil soldiers had come rushing today to eradicate Yuan school. This time the enemy was enormous and powerful, and it seemed like there truly was a danger of total destruction awaiting Yuan school. Lu Hongwei assumed an awe-inspiring pose, displaying the true power of half-step legendary realm. The extent of his power was simply difficult to visualize. The entire battlefield was riddled with corpses of devils and human experts. Everywhere, the disciples of Yuan school and the devils were indulged in clearing each other out. Lu Hongwei's arm, which was possessed by a devil sword, released a devilish magical beam towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not budge and stood still like a mountain, with an icy cold look in his eyes. His whole body was radiating golden rays of light. He appeared like a golden god that was cloaked in divine golden halo. This was the first time he was going to display his true battle strength of half-step legendary realm. He roared towards the sky, and his whole body was engulfed by an unprecedented amount of magnificent energy. Yi Shiwen swiftly joined his hands together and shot a golden beam towards the devil arm. Bang! A terrifying shock wave swept across as a result of this collision. The demon cavalries and the Yuan disciples who were present around the perimeter were directly sent off flying. Yi Shiwen, you cannot fight here, otherwise you will accidentally injure many disciples of your own sect, Yi Mo said. At this time, a huge silhouette appeared in the sky. Qinyu Peak was actually a flying war fortress, and that had come to Yi Zaiwen's aid. It was larger than an average mountain and was constantly shooting energy beams at the enemy forces, wiping out countless devil cavalries with each strike. Even the war monster was too slow to dodge a powerful beam attack and was directly cut in half. The power of the flying war fortress was fully manifested at this time. Ha ha ha, the prince is here! At this time, the wolf cub laughed mockingly, then opened his mouth and fired a grand-scale attack at the devil cavalry, which resulted in a mushroom cloud. In a blink of an eye, hundreds of devils were annihilated. Yi Shu was standing next to the wolf cub, and he also began to use all sorts of martial techniques, wiping out several devil cavalrymen in groups. As for Yi Feng and the others that did not come out, since they had not yet entered into the truth realm, they were not capable enough of protecting themselves in this battlefield. Therefore, they were simply operating various Zhen laws and martial attacks from inside the Qinyu war fortress. Yi Shiwen grinned, and a burst of golden light seeped out of his body and instantly swept through the formations of devil cavalrymen instantly. Aya! The entire battlefield was shaken by the pitiful screams of the devil soldiers, as their souls were directly harvested by this golden light and turned them into golden blood fog. You want escape from me? Lu Hongwei stared at Yi Shiwen with his burning red eyes, then immediately began to chase Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen directly flew inside the devil formation and unleashed his powers, killing them in hundreds at a time while trying his best to avoid accidentally hurting his fellow disciples. However, Lu Hongwei did not seem to care about the loss of his own soldiers in friendly fire. Yi Shiwen was like an invincible entity, cutting his way through the devil cavalrymen. No one was able to stop him no matter how much tried. The divinities crawling within his body were a devil's worst nemesis. Kill him! The shouts were lingering in the battlefield. The battle continued. Corpses were being sent flying around. Streams of blood were flowing across the battlefield, indicating the extent of the death toll that continued to rise with each passing moment. Bang! 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 Along with a barrage of terrifying noises of explosions, Yi Shiwen was encircled by numerous devil experts. But in a blink of an eye, all were chopped into pieces by Yi Shiwen. Han Seal was summoned by Yi Shiwen in the sky. It transformed into a huge mountain and slammed down upon devil exerts. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen was unceasingly slaughtering the enemies that were appearing in his way. However, as a result of that, his speed finally slowed down a bit, and this made it possible for Lu Hongwei to overtake him. I would like to see where you will go now. Lu Hongwei was keeping a close eye on Yi Shiwen and did not seem to care about the devils who had been massacred so far. His eyes were fixed on the real enemy, Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen was not eliminated right away, then his plan would most likely fail once again, not to mention he might have to flee again in a severely injured state like the previous time. Bang! Lu Hongwei sliced the air with his devil's sword, and suddenly a horrifying light which was made up of machi began to billow around him. NT, machi equals Devilki. It is time for you to say goodbye to this world. Lu Hongwei clenched his teeth in anger, and his red eyes sparkled like a crazed beast. It seemed as if Lu Hongwei's anger could sweep away the universe any time now. Yi Zaiwen's eyes reflected no fear. Instead, a golden light flickered in his hands. Coiling Dragon Palm was unleashed by Yi Shiwen, instantly releasing a coiling dragon into this world. It appeared like a living golden dragon, all set to devour the opponent ahead. Bang! A terrifying collision took place when Yi Zaiwen's coiling dragon swallowed a huge bout of machi, but all of a sudden, the machi suddenly burst out of its body, annihilating it in the process. Lu Hongwei was at a higher level when compared with Yi Shiwen. After all, there was a gap of almost 100 to 200 worth of practice years between the two. Yi Shiwen made a strategic retreat while Lu Hongwei continued to move in his direction under the urge to kill him once and for all. Yi Shiwen, I am afraid this Lu Hongwei has attained half-step legendary realm long back. Yi Mo's voice sounded in Yi Shiwen's mind. Yi Zaiwen's heart shook for a moment. A while ago he had finally stepped into complete truth realm, and his battle strength was equivalent to half-step legendary realm, reaching the same level as Lu Hongwei, but the so-called half-step legendary realm had many distinctions. Although the battle strength of both Yi Shiwen and Qi Fifan were on half-step legendary level, but in reality, Yi Shiwen was still not as strong as Qi Fifan. Besides the ordinary half-step legendary realm, there existed several branch levels such as half-step legendary first stage, half-step legendary second stage, and so on, all the way up to the 9th stage. Yi Shiwen could easily defeat an opponent who was at ordinary half-step legendary realm. But after reaching the higher levels such as half-step legendary first stage or above, the battle strength also increased exponentially with each stage. Regardless of how much an ordinary person would practice, they could only achieve the half-step legendary realm. Only a genius could break the shackles of half-step legendary realm and truly achieve the first stage or second stage, and so on. One must know that if an expert was at half-step legendary first stage, then their battle strength would be equivalent to that an expert on legendary first stage. And the same analogy would apply at other half-step legendary stages as well. However, the issue was that there was a tremendous gap between any two neighboring stages in the half-step legendary realm. An expert who was at half-step legendary first stage just did not stand a chance against an opponent who was a stage above him. This strict barrier was specifically prominent in the half-step legendary realm. Not to mention, only talented experts could actually dream of reaching the higher stages within half-step legendary realm, leaving no other alternative options whatsoever for ordinary experts. In other words, a high level of talent was a must to reach the higher and mostly inaccessible stages that were hidden inside the half-step legendary realm. Ordinary experts simply had no talent or the option to step into the half-step legendary first stage and could only have a breakthrough directly into the legendary first stage, then continue forward. Of course, if an expert was able to reach half-step legendary fourth or fifth stage and decided to have a breakthrough and step into legendary realm, then they would automatically step right into the legendary fourth or fifth stage, however, with better foundation and understanding. Half-step legendary realm was a very important stage for someone who was really determined to have limitless future prospects in the world of martial arts. It was a very crucial stage to lay the foundation for an eventual breakthrough into the sage realm, which was very important for transcending the mortal world. It was said that if a person would stay for a longer time in the half-step legendary realm, they would be able to enjoy limitless future prospects. This was the reason why TMU had made a special assessment for half-step legendary category. Those who were at the higher stages of half-step legendary realm always had more chances of being selected by TMU. However, the breakthrough to each stage was very difficult, and this immense measure of difficulty was enough to limit the quantity in each assessment. Now, it was no longer a mystery why Lu Hongwei was still stuck in half-step legendary realm. After all, more than 100 years ago, he had fought with Chu Jingkai and the other pro-disciple of that generation. Back then, if he had chosen to have a breakthrough into the legendary realm, then he would probably have reached legendary 3rd or 4th stage by now. However, he chose to stay in half-step legendary realm and was now at half-step legendary 1st stage. In other words, this showed how much difficult it was to climb stages inside the half-step legendary realm. In other words, an expert can choose to stay in half-step legendary realm and accumulate energy and understanding via cultivation. Then their cultivation will rise from half-step legendary 1st stage to the 2nd stage, and so on within the same realm. It's the expert's choice to decide when to have a final breakthrough into the legendary realm. Yi Shiwen, today I will kill you for sure. Lu Hongwei roared. Tianyuan mirror. Yi Shiwen pulled out his wild card. He would not have cared much if he was facing an ordinary expert of half-step legendary realm, but now he needed to pay more attention because his opponent was at the 1st stage of half-step legendary realm. Tianyuan mirror appeared on top of Yi Zaiwen's head instantaneously. It started whirling and simultaneously began to release a dreadful coercion, as if coming straight from the command of the Devil King and powerful enough to suppress all devil soldiers, right where they were. Within a mile radius, all magical beasts began to tremble with fear and kneeled down on the ground, not daring to get up. Although no one understood why this was happening, it was the kind of scary feeling which came from the bottom of their hearts, which made them scared and timid. This was a bizarre scene and shocked everyone who witnessed it on the battlefield. However, no one knew that this scene was just an aftermath of Yi Zaiwen's intended attack that was aimed directly at Lu Hongwei. What mischief are you up to now? Lu Hongwei roared. He only felt a dreadful restraint deep inside his mind. His consciousness was being blinded. He wanted Yi Shiwen dead, but now he felt like he wanted Yi Shiwen to live, as if he was being forced into thinking that Yi Shiwen must not die and he must not attack Yi Shiwen at any cost. The confused state of his mind was a serious threat to him and his plan. This was a startling yet terrifying deterrent. His strength was also gravely affected and directly dropped down from half-step legendary 1st stage to ordinary half-step legendary realm. This swift decrease in his power made Lu Hongwei nearly go crazy as he rushed towards Yi Zaiwen to attack him. However, after the sudden drop in Lu Hongwei's strength, Yi Shiwen was no longer hesitant to fight back with all his might. To be continued. Chapter 283. NT. 3rd Compensation Chapter. Chapter 283. Provokes a legend the old sect head was sent flying into a mountain peak and blasted it to bits. You humans are inferior creatures. It is impossible for you to stop our superior devil race. The Sage Realm Spectre said to the old sect head with a cold look in his eyes. Old head! Old head! Numerous disciples of Yi Yuan school cried out in fright. No, our old head was also defeated. He couldn't stop that Sage Realm Spectre. What should we do now? The disciples were now desperate. Although they were not alive 1,000 years ago, they had heard from the people who lived during that time about the old head. Their hearts were filled with respect for him. For them, he was a deity who had saved Yi Yuan school at the most crucial time, flipping the tides of misfortune. Even now at this age, he was willing to raise his sword and fight. As long as he stood there, he was like an invincible war god, instilling confidence and morale among the disciples. Old Head is now old and fragile, but in the past he bore the title of the unparalleled hero. If he wasn't old and injured to such an extent, This despicable specter wouldn't be rampaging like this in his presence. Whispers between the Yuan disciples were heard by the specter, who, then, revealed a disdainful smile on his face and said, "Human race is really the most worthless race in all of the 10,000 worlds, and we devils will make sure to eliminate your very existence. In front of our devil cavalry, you are nothing more than a herd of lambs, all prepared to be slaughtered." "Damn you! How dare you say such spiteful things to my disciples? It seems you and your stinking bugs really want to venture the depths of hell. I will gladly fulfill your wish and banish you to hell along with these insects. Yes, even the so-called devil cavalry of yours cannot defeat us." The old head stood up. His stature was skinny, his back was arched, yet he grasped his sword and slashed it towards the specter. "You still dare to raise your sword. Seems like you really don't want to live." The specter sneered, "We have 100 methods to heal you, and you can even progress your cultivation by leaps and bounds as long as you are willing to join our side and become a devil slave." "I am aged, but I have not lost my self-respect. Cuckoo." The old head coughed a few times, then said, "The human race has established itself in this world through countless tribulations and sufferings. There is nothing that can ever strike us down." An overwhelming amount of heroic aura overflowed out of his body and enveloped him completely. "Those who will not surrender to us shall be slaughtered." The specter ordered callously as he stood tall and high, surrounded by his prestige as a devil. "We will see that." The old head shot a fascinating sword-key attack towards the specter. Bang! A terrifying sound resounded everywhere as if penetrating the sky. The chaotic sword-key, as if appeared to be cutting the world itself into two halves. The old head's attacks continued to become more and more horrifying. This rampaging sword attack was so insanely destructive that it made the specter retreat as far as possible to evade the attack. He just did not dare to face the old head's sword attack. Although it was clear that the old head was now on the winning side of this battle, but the disciples of Yuan School did not share even the tiniest bit of excitement. They all knew that the old head was burning his own life force, and irrespective of what the result would be, he would most likely. Some people were terrified of the thought that he wouldn't even survive till the end of the war. The old head did not even portray the slightest bit of hesitation and once again attacked, churning the entire sky with his martial attacks and marking the outbreak of a great battle's finale. The old head knew that he didn't have much time, and the rate at which the fight was consuming his energy was more than he could handle. In fact, even the specter knew that the old head was approaching the complete exhaustion of his vitality. "Don't you realize that you have come to fight an obsolete war?" Old head said lightly, but his long sword did not have a moment to stop. It was unceasingly howling and releasing sword-key across the skyline. "You filthy old guy. You breathe greedily on a day-to-day basis to survive. I do not need to kill you because you will die on your own soon." The specter sneered and said, "Despicable, shameless. You are nothing in front of our old head, so shut your mouth, you filthy devil. Originally, I wanted to see you die on your own, but since you say so, I will kill you with my own hands and also crush your pride in the process. That will make you realize that devil race is the true ruler of the heavens, and your human race is only suited to be our slaves." The specter said in a loud voice while his body was enveloped in a sea of machi. His devil spear started to rumble, summoning the ideal condition of chaotic devil laws as if restarting the age of chaos in this world. The old head rushed forward with his sword, slicing the life out of all things around. He was the strongest expert of Yuan School and had achieved complete mastery over his sword skills through a comprehensive study. At this time, he finally used his sword intention on the specter. Bang! 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 The sword key collided with the spur key, and the resulting explosion spread across the sky. The battle between these two sage realm experts had finally started to get more and more intense. "Today you will die." Lu Hongwei did not know how Yi Shiwen had affected his strength, but his cultivation had reduced from single layer of half-step legendary realm to ordinary half-step legendary realm. However, he still did not consider Yi Shiwen as a worthy opponent. Since you wish to die, I will certainly help you. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes slowly. There was a divine golden radiance in his eyes, making him appear like a godly entity in the battlefield. Yi Shiwen immediately used his golden claws to stop the incoming attack. Lu Hongwei's sword key attack was easily grabbed and then extinguished by Yi Zaiwen's golden claws. Last time, you were lucky enough to escape from the hands of Brother Qi, but this time, you will not be able to escape from me. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly and immediately summoned the Han seal in the sky, aiming it directly at Lu Hongwei. You are courting death. Lu Hongwei yelled in anger. Last time, he had indeed suffered a severe wound at the hands of Qi Fifan, and this was simply of great shame to him. And today, Yi Shiwen reminded him of this matter just to puncture his pride and provoke him. And it seemed like Yi Shiwen actually succeeded in his plan. The devil's sword held in Lu Hongwei's hand was exuding faint traces of machi, and suddenly the roars of devilish dragons filled the surroundings while swords sliced through the sky. Even the earth shook under the influence of this sword attack. Bang! The shock waves created by this sword attack were so terrifying that they instantly annihilated several devils of Xiantian level that happened to be in attack range. Clang! The sword light shot up into the sky, formed a dense and rippling sword light, then condensed into a rain of arrows and were blasted towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen pressed the Han seal down, and it instantly crushed this grand-scale sword key attack. You are bold, human! At this time, a sonic boom exploded in the sky, and a big hand extended down from the sky to grab Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had dared to rush in the midst of the devil cavalry, which made him stand out as a unique entity, also turning him into a direct target. The aura which was covering the big hand was terrifying, simply earth-shattering, and while it swept across, Yi Shiwen sensed the strength of legendary realm from it. It was the move of a peerless master of the legendary realm. The devil soldiers were shivering after seeing the fearful power of this attack. An ordinary master of half-step legendary realm just couldn't achieve such a level of power. Yi Shiwen was not a man who would sit still. He stuck out his palms, which immediately transformed into dragon claws, and went forward to greet the incoming big devil hand. Bang! The big hand, the dragon claws collided in midair and mutually annihilated each other, ultimately transforming into a turbulent flow of Lingqi. Legendary devil! The disciples of Yi Yuan's school cried out in horror as they never expected that a legendary level expert would suddenly attack Yi Shiwen. For these disciples, according to their understanding, an expert of the legendary realm was a great being and simply out of their comprehension. After all, even a senior disciple like Chu Jinkai had recently stepped into the legendary realm. Boom! As if a tsunami of energy greeted the scene and overwhelmed everyone. Why is a legendary devil suddenly daring to fight with me? Yi Shiwen asked in a calm voice. Everyone gawked when they heard what Yi Shiwen said. He basically provoked a legendary devil, despite being in truth realm himself. Was Yi Shiwen actually provoking a legendary devil for a face-to-face fight? All the disciples froze on the spot and could not believe what they just heard and saw. This was a legendary devil, a true legend. Boy, today will be marked as the day of your demise. I will kill you first, then destroy your Yi Yuan school. The legendary level devil said while giving Yi Shiwen a cold and murderous look. Get out of my way. This is my enemy. I will be the one who would take his life. Lu Hongwei roared. Humph! You are just a waste who cannot even cope with a trivial human of Truth Realm. The devil basically looked down upon the human race, and being a human being who had adopted devil ways, Lu Hongwei was no exception either. To be continued. Chapter 284. NT. I am resuming regular releases. Be prepared for a long but entertaining chapter, laughing face. Chapter 284. Lu Hongwei slaughtered. Lu Hongwei's complexion suddenly turned pale. His relationship with devils was not necessarily good. He had followed the path of devil worship, which included practicing devil arts, ultimately turning him into a half-human, half-devil hybrid. People like him were known as devil men. These people were characteristically selfish, ruthless, and evil, otherwise would have never been tempted by devil powers. Those who lusted for devil powers were certainly not part of the good crop, but real devils were inherently evil and cunning. Was there really a scope for these two types of sinister factions to get along? Although they had same interests at the moment, it did not mean that they were going to be on friendly terms in the future. Do you want to fight with me? Lu Hongwei snarled. What's the point of fighting you? Killing you shall be an effortless task and doesn't interest me at all. The devil said in a disrespectful manner. Do you want to die? Lu Hongwei gritted his teeth and said, Do not fight among yourselves. Come. Both of you can come at me at once. Yi Shiwen mocked them, and a terrifying aura rippled out of his body and spread in all directions. He was not at all intimidated, even while facing two experts who were at a much higher level than him. Suddenly, a sword intention appeared in his hand and began to compress and dilate the surrounding space. You devils just look big and talk big, but when in an actual battle, you cower like ants in front of human powerhouses. Bullshit, you humans can just dream of defeating us devils in battle. The legendary level devil said in a proud voice. He did not want to team up with Lu Hongwei as suggested by Yi Shiwen. Prepare yourselves. Yi Shiwen roared like a wild beast, and his voice, as if broke through the barrier of this world and echoed throughout the universe. The sword intention was instantly unleashed into the sky, along with the ideal condition of coiling dragon palm that summoned a humongous coiling dragon in the sky. It was so huge that it seemed like even the sky wouldn't be able to contain its existence. This was the kind of glorious existence that could make its way directly into the historical records. Everyone was shocked by the extent of power being displayed by Yi Shiwen. Everyone was looking towards the sky as their eyes were as if glued to the magnificent golden figure of Yi Shiwen, who was floating above the coiling dragon like a furious god of war. Yi Shiwen sneered and swept the rippling sword intention across the sky. Like a beam of fragmented yet interconnected rippling energy, it went forward at an incredibly fast pace. Yi Shiwen had already reached such a high comprehension level of sword skill that he didn't actually need an actual sword to use sword attacks. The sword intention as if disintegrated the air on the molecular level and went straight towards the legendary level devil expert. Boom! He tried to block the attack, but was directly sent flying far away. Only now did he realize his mistake of underestimating Yi Shiwen, and a look of terror dominated his face. Yi Zaiwen's stalwart figure was wrapped in a dense golden cloak of divine light. Yi Zaiwen's enormous power and frightening attacks immediately boosted the morale of Yuan disciples, but they also felt a little strange. How in the world was Yi Shiwen was able to do all this? He was just an expert of complete truth realm, but his attacks were somehow pushing back a legendary expert. This was simply unrealistic. However, the disciples didn't seem to notice one thing that was picked up, well, by the legendary devil senses. He sensed a strange and horrifying aura emanating from Yi Zaiwen's body. He felt like facing a mythical being from ancient times. In fact, just by standing in Yi Zaiwen's presence, he felt like his mind and soul were being dominated. He also felt a rogue idea capturing his mind, as if telling him of his inferior existence in front of the mighty being that's standing before him. An ominous coercion tightly enveloped him and made his cultivation to fall all the way to half-step legendary realm. Actually, a major part of his power and energy were used up in combating this ominous coercion. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been pushed back the sword attack. I guess now I have the required qualifications to fight the two of you at the same time, correct? Yi Shiwen said in an indifferent tone, but it was filled with a kind of invincible confidence. "You are courting death." The legendary level devil and Lu Hongwei ultimately decided to join forces and jointly issued an attack on Yi Shiwen, immediately tearing the space at several places. It seemed as if numerous stars were falling from the sky and were aimed at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen unleashed a second sword strike, filling the entire sky with golden energy. For a moment, it seemed like the entire world was made up of gold, but the very next moment, the golden energy exploded and suppressed the very stability of this world, crushing everything in the range. Yi Shiwen was like the sword god of this world, because all sword laws were under his control. Boom! The two attacks collided, and resulting exploded as if resembled the explosion of a star. The fight in the sky had entered a superheated phase, while the three half-step legendary experts were fiercely clashing with each other. Yi Shiwen was keeping a strategic position in the sky so that the complementary of his attacks could kill as many devil soldiers as possible. Yi Shiwen's sword intention swayed in his hands as he said in a cold voice, "Brace yourselves." The sword intention crawled out of his hands and went towards both Lu Hongwei and the legendary devil. The legendary devil also took out his spear and shot a terrible spear attack, consisting of dreadful spurky fluctuations towards the incoming sword intention attack. The two attacks clashed in the sky and led to a massive explosion. Boom! This was an earth-shattering collision and swept off endless shock waves in all directions. The true power of the legendary devil revealed itself just now. Even though a major part of his power was being suppressed by Tianyuan Mirror's coercion, the quality of his energy was still superior to that of an expert of half-step legendary realm. But at this time, Lu Hongwei's devil sword released vibrating machi that collided with Yi Zaiwen's sword intention and blocked it in its way. Boom! The enormous destructive power contained in this blast swept all around, and the three experts backed off, no one daring to go near the aftermath of this explosion. Yi Shiwen went a few steps back before stopping in midair, then immediately unleashed yet another sword intention towards the two experts. However, this time the sword intention was massive and proceeded forward wantonly, destroying everything in its way, evaporating mountains and wiping out forests in a blink of an eye. While at the same time, Lu Hongwei and the legendary devil collaborated and unleashed their best attacks. Bang! The pure power of this collision invoked tremors all over and bulldozed everything in the range. The machi contained in the spurky attack left a terrible wound on Yi Zaiwen's body. The blood started to ooze out of this wound and appeared just like a fountain of blood. However, the legendary devil received a much terrible wound as the sword intention directly pierced through his body, leaving a large hole in his abdomen. Lu Hongwei was also in a critical condition, but not as severe as the legendary devil, because a large percentage of the blast was blocked by the legendary devil, shielding Lu Hongwei in the process. Therefore, he only received flesh wounds. An ice-cold look appeared on the legendary devil's face, but immediately Machi quickly wrapped his wound and it started to heal at a fast pace. A devil's restoration ability could really leave a human expert flabbergasted. The legendary devil's eyes were bloodshot and full of killing intention. His sword-like sharp eyes were stubbornly staring at Yi Shiwen as if trying to kill him with the stare itself. His killing intention was the real deal. Lu Hongwei was experiencing an extreme shortness of breath. He had once lost to Qi Fifan, but at least he was considered the leader of the younger generation in Great Yu State. However, if he lost to a 20-year-old youngster like Yi Shiwen, then wouldn't it leave a stain on his reputation forever? He had been practicing devil arts consistently for decades, then how were these ordinary humans surpassing him one after another? However, he was shocked once again when he saw Yi Zaiwen's wound healing at an incredibly fast speed and completely restoring itself in a blink of an eye. When compared to Yi Zaiwen's regeneration ability, the legendary devil's restoration ability was literally garbage. The legendary devil was frustrated and just didn't want to accept what he saw just now. How could these inferior humans have such outstanding regeneration ability? Of course, he knew that Yi Shiwen must have practiced some kind of secret technique, but that didn't change the fact that he was just a human being. His frustration was understandable. After all, he had come to this world to massacre human being by crushing them like ants. He never thought of the possibility of bumping into a monstrosity in human form. Die. Both Lu Hongwei and the legendary devil were raging to kill Yi Shiwen, and once again timed their attacks to congeal a massive Machi-based attack. Now that you devils have already come into our territory, don't even think about going back alive. Yi Shiwen sneered. The whole sky was torn open by a divine golden sword intention as it instantly annihilated the enemy's joint offensive. Puchi! A terrible was torn open in the legendary devil's body. His blood spattered and the broken bone fragments were sent flying. Yi Shiwen had used his strongest sword attack, so the outcome was not surprising. Yi Zaiwen's tyrannical, imposing aura swept off everywhere. Everyone gawked at this scene because they just couldn't believe that an expert of complete truth realm could actually fight with an expert of half-step legendary realm and the other of the legendary first stage. Not to mention, Yi Shiwen was single-handedly pushing them back, and it seemed as if he was not even trying. How was this possible? However, the reason and explanation didn't matter now, as the Yi Yuan crowd kept on cheering for Yi Shiwen, the guy who gave them immense confidence and the will to fight back. Such a fearful human, I cannot let him live. A killing intention flashed in the eyes of the legendary devil. He knew that Yi Shiwen must not be allowed to live and grow, otherwise he would certainly become a huge threat to their cause. The three experts again clashed in the sky and started to go all out. Yi Shiwen just wouldn't fall under the wind, no matter how much they tried. Clang! Yi Zaiwen's sword intention once again instantly swept across the sky and wreaked havoc everywhere. Boom! 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 Yi Zaiwen's changed his strategy, and this time unleashed a smaller, yet faster sword-ki attack towards the legendary devil. Boom! The devil used his spear to block it, but some sections of sword-ki were deflected towards him from the sides and hit him, making him spout a mouthful of blood due to the impact. At this time, Lu Hongwei took advantage of the opportunity and launched a long-ranged attack at Yi Shiwen in the form of dazzling shooting stars made up of sword-ki. The legendary devil ignored his own injuries because he didn't have enough time to stop for healing them. He must team up with Lu Hongwei and time his attacks perfectly to kill Yi Shiwen. He would worry about his pride later, but first he must eliminate at all costs. His battle strategy was dependent on the assumption that Lu Hongwei would have to play the role of bait. However, how could Yi Shiwen not know about their strategy? Yi Shiwen guessed what they were planning to do and sneered. Right now, his physical condition was at its peak thanks to Phoenix regeneration, whereas the other two were injured and almost exhausted. Yi Shiwen unleashed his sword intention attack to tackle the incoming shooting stars. However, before the enemy could attack again, Yi Shiwen immediately summoned Han's seal in the sky. It transformed into a humongous sierra and smashed down. Bang! Lu Hongwei collided with Han's sierra and was sent flying far away, ejecting blood from his mouth, then fell to the ground. He glared at the legendary devil who actually used him as a shield to escape from Han's attack. The legendary devil looked coldly at Lu Hongwei. Deep in his heart, he simply looked down on humans and did not think that doing something like this was wrong. To him, human beings were born to serve devil race as slaves. But before he could have fun seeing Lu Hongwei in such a sorry state, Yi Shiwen shot his sword intention attack directly towards him. According to Yi Zaiwen's battle strategy, the legendary devil was more dangerous than Lu Hongwei and must be eliminated first. Yi Shiwen hand, sword meaning light, burst terror thrusts. The legendary devil never expected to be attacked like this, and his carelessness caused his demise. The sword intention punctured the energy barrier protecting his body, then further pierced into his body and destroyed his heart, ripping a hole in his chest. NT, Okiora, tongue sticking out. On his chest ripped a big hole. The legendary devil wanted to struggle, but suddenly a Hans seal appeared in the sky and instantly smashed him into ground, turning his body into meat patty. Lu Hongwei saw the pitiful demise of the legendary devil and started to laugh like a madman. Yi Shiwen was not planning to let him off and immediately released a sword-light attack that went across the sky and chopped Lu Hongwei into pieces, ending his life. Although it seemed like a long story, in fact, all this happened in a matter of several breaths. The spectacular battle between the old head and the specter was soon going to enter the final phase. To be continued. Chapter 285. NT. Regular chapter. CH 285. Died in where the old head and the specter were fighting furiously to decide the outcome of the battle. The old head was exceptional. He used simple sword techniques, but they were filled with immense power. The strike of the sword filled the air with sword ki, which cracked open a massive void. The specter roared, and a powerful dragon shot out from his devil spear. It engaged with the old head and started fighting with him viciously. The fight between these two experts was so violent that everyone feared it would cause colossal damage to the sect. Even though the eyesight of the old head was weak, he had a strong tactical understanding about how to fight high up in the sky. At that instant, Yi Shiwen caught a glimpse of the fight and saw that the old head was struggling and had already spent most of his life force. He was losing his vision and also experiencing shortness of breath. It seemed that he would be defeated, senseless, any moment now. Yi Shiwen was worried because the specter was getting stronger. If the old head was defeated, then everyone underneath would have to face the wrath of the specter, and he would wipe out Yuan School in no time. A master in the sage realm was considered to be exceptionally strong. A legendary realm expert was enough to cause wreak havoc in the 10 countries of the southeast region, but a sage expert was strong enough to rule over the entire southeast region. Just one sage realm expert was sufficient to not just lead an entire sect, but also to dominate over the 10 countries of the southeast region, let alone a sect like Yuan School. However, Yi Shiwen did not know about any other sage-level existence in the Yuan School. There was only one sage expert, the old head, and everyone was convinced of his demise. However, the presence of the old head was radiant and scared the specter. He was pushing the battle to the limit to quickly burn up the life force of the old head. But it was remarkable how the old head had lived for 1,000 years. The old head was Yuan School's final trump card, and he was certainly not just an ordinary deterrent. Bang! Yi Shiwen summoned the Hans seal, which got bigger and bigger in the sky, and slammed it down instantly on the devil cavalries, causing severe casualties. Devil experts were ignoring Yi Shiwen. They did not want to engage in a fight with him. They had witnessed how he had slaughtered Lu Hongwei and the legendary realm devil. They thought that they didn't have enough strength to go against Yi Shiwen. They were not aware of the role of Tianyuan Mirror in the demise of Lu Hongwei and the legendary devil. They were inherently scared of Yi Shiwen, mostly due to the influence of Tianyuan Mirror, which was associated with his aura, and therefore did not dare to approach him. Right now, Yi Shiwen's focus was concentrated on the battle between the two sage realm experts. "Today you will die, old man." The specter laughed wildly, and 10,000 poisonous snakes exploded out from his spear. Each snake was covered in venom, which corroded the atmosphere. A peculiar feeling of terror spread among the spectators. Old Head's expression did not change. He coughed out blood once, then charged towards the specter. His sword movements were quick and flared up the whole sky. Old Head's sword was swift enough to break through the 10,000 sword laws of the world. Boom! The Old Head's sword attack seemed mediocre, but suddenly it burst out into a vibrant light which was difficult to look at. It was massive enough to sweep off everything around. It instantly chopped off the specter's spear attack. The specter's expression changed. He was shocked, taken aback after witnessing the Old Head's sudden sword attack. Shwa! Old Head's sword attack was bursting with terror and instantly collided with the specter's spear attack. The sword attack was much more powerful and swift and ultimately deflected the spear attack. However, the swift sword attack didn't stop there and moved forward. The very next instant, it sliced right through the specter's neck. How is this possible? A look of disbelief appeared in the specter's eyes. Boom! The specter's tall body collapsed. The old head descended from the sky, carrying the specter's head in one hand. But Yi Shiwen noticed that his face had started to wither, and his skin became dry like an old bark. He was losing his vitality, and even his hands and feet were trembling. The disciples of the Yuan school were crying because they could see that the old head had arrived at the end of his life. Comprehensive counterattack. The elders, the top leaders, and the present sect head of Yuan school, Wu Patian, immediately came out from the depths of Yuan school and roared. Wu Patian was covered in blood, while the other experts had also suffered grave injuries. One of them was missing an arm and was also losing a lot of blood. All these experts had experienced tough battles, and now that the enemy sage expert had been beheaded, they finally made an appearance to make use of the sudden boost in morale to lead the disciples into a final comprehensive counterattack. The death of the specter created uproar amongst the devil soldiers. They never thought that the old head would be powerful enough to defeat the specter. There was a sudden decline in their will to fight any longer and began to flee through the crack in the space. Yuan disciples were exhilarated, and there occurred a sudden boost in their morale. Teacher. Wu Patian saw the old head, fell to his knees, and burst into tears. He reminisced about his childhood times with the old head when he used to be just a student. It was because of the old head that his progress had increased by leaps and bounds, ultimately helping him become the sect head of Yuan school. He couldn't suppress his emotions after seeing this plight of the old head. Everyone was in tears, after all. The old head had been looking after them for such a long time. Many of the top leaders were aware of the majestic powers of the old head, but the disciples were never his students and only knew about his tyrannical existence. In their hearts, the old head held a higher prestige than the founder of Yuan school. Stupid son! The old head landed on top of a mountain peak and put down the specter's head. Some people came forward to receive the specter's head because it was a priceless treasure and could help in excelling a fearful magical weapon. The old head sighed, saying, "Life is supposed to start with birth and end with death. What is important is to live the way you want and to do what you want. However, we martial artists strive to achieve a prestigious title. Look at me, I should have died sooner. But I lived for more than 1,000 years. Even though I have acquired this much, it is still nothing. Old head, you cannot die. You cannot leave Yuan school." Wu Patian burst into tears. It was very unlikely of a man to cry like this, but given the situation, it was acceptable, and no one would judge him for that. Many of the disciples were also crying. Old head shook his head and said, "Yuan school's strength has made me very proud. I am convinced that it has a strong generation of disciples." Old head's aura became increasingly weak. He recalled the time when he was just an ordinary true disciple. But once upon a time, Yuan school was in an emergency. When a large of experts died in a treasure hunt, he pushed himself to the limit and came to the front of the stage to lead the weakened sect, all the way to its current glory. His peaceful life was disrupted by that. In that era of turmoil, expeditions, deadly battles, wars, he participated in all to restore the status of Yuan school and let it back on the right path. However, he lost too much and too many in the process. Loved ones, fellow brothers, teachers, spouse, he outlived all of them and lived his way to the current date. This was silent departure. His frail body instantly turned into mist and dust and vanished. In front of everyone, the old head died respectfully in a sitting posture. Everyone stopped crying, but they were full of remorse after seeing the old head's demise. At that instant, Wu Patian stood up and roared angrily, "Kill all these devil bastards! Make them pay the price!" Yi Shiwen also controlled his emotions and restrained his heavy heart. After all, the old head had died peacefully in a sitting posture, and that too out of his own will. He had never met the old head, however, he did harbor immense amount of respect for him. Yi Shiwen, the wolf cub, and Yi Shu flew back to the Qianyu Peak, flying war fortress. Where the usual peaceful paradise-like atmosphere was now replaced with a miserable one. All sorts of attack-based laws and Jun circles were activated and working nonstop. Yi Shiwen felt like he had entered a war machine. Yi Shiwen immediately assumed command, while it was needless to say that the true power of Qianyu Peak was unleashed instantly. Like a domineering flying war machine, it flew forward while eradicating the devil soldiers in its way. A legendary-level devil tried to stop the war fortress, but was directly crushed to death by the combined attacks of Yi Shiwen and Qianyu Peak. Kill them all! Destroy the devil lair! Yi Shiwen sat well above the seat of honor and shouted like a true commander. To be continued. Chapter 286. Regular Chapter. Chapter 286. Aftermath. The devil forces were trying to escape from the cracks in space. All the legendary experts were rushing to slaughter them, especially Wu Patian and his subordinates. He had just experienced the pain of the loss of his mentor and was not able to resist the grief. He wanted to vent out all his anger, so he rushed to kill the devil forces. Wu Patian looked like a deity who had descended into this world with a terrifying aura. The devil forces did not have anyone who could stop him except the specter, but he was already dead. Wu Patian was beaming with anger because the devil forces had dared to attack his home, and the loss he had to suffer was grave. Yi Shiwen crashed into the space, crash along with Qianyu Peak. He was leading the way while others were following him. Qianyu Peak was a specially designed floating war fortress that was only given to the pro-disciples and was much superior to ordinary floating peaks. Not even the attacks of a legendary realm expert could bring it down. Not to mention it was not possible to bring down Qianyu Peak so easily because Yi Zaiwen was there to guard it. The combined power of Yi Shiwen and Qianyu Peak was enormous and disastrous for anyone or anything that stood in their way. The importance of Qianyu Peak could be determined from the fact that in over 1,000 years of history, Yuan School was able to accumulate not more than 10 floating war fortresses. And only the pro-disciples were eligible to have their own floating war fortresses. Anyway, there were never too many pro-disciples to surpass the number of available fortresses. One must know that building such a fortress was much more difficult compared to training disciples of similar strength, since the cost of the resources required was almost 10 times more. These war fortresses were very significant during such attacks and were made to defend the sect only during such critical times. During the attack, the Taijun elders were busy activating these war fortresses, and right now they were relying on the extreme destructive power of the war fortresses to wipe out the devil forces. Yi Shiwen issued an order, and the Qianyu Peak rushed forward to exterminate the remaining devil soldiers. Yi Shiwen chased the devils into the space crack and saw that at the other end of the crack there was a valley. It was spread in several thousand square kilometers, although Yi Shiwen was not sure where this place was located in his world. He was certain that they had found the devil's lair. Many devil soldiers were boiling with excitement after seeing the invaders in their lair. Several devil experts ascended to attack them along with many war monsters. The Qianyu Peak was surrounded by a Lingqi barrier which was protecting it, even though the firepower was consuming way too much energy from the spiritual arteries. The devil base was also surviving on similar veins, which were present underneath the valley, and it made the devil war machines much powerful and easy to use. But they still could not rival the resources of Yuan School. Bang! The devil forces attacked the Qianyu Peak, and it vibrated due to the impact caused by a barrage of attacks. Yi Shiwen issued an order forward, and the Qianyu Peak crashed into the valley. Various attack-based laws and gen circles were activated. All sorts of martial attacks were launched. Everything that came in its way was destroyed, while the other floating peaks also arrived in abundance and started following the lead of Qianyu Peak. Wu Patian and several other elders, followed by the war fortresses, rushed forward to attack the devil camps. Numerous devil soldiers could not resist the attack and were killed instantly. "Who is there?" There was a mighty roar from the depths of the valley, and a terrifying claw appeared from the sky. It grabbed one of the floating peaks and crushed it. The floating peak exploded, and many disciples were killed at once. Humph! Wu Patian growled and swayed his sword. It was clear that his sword technique was somewhat similar to the old head. Even though it was not that swift and potent, however, his sword key attack seemed powerful enough to split the world. Wu Patian swayed his sword, and in a flash, dissected the devil claw in the sky. The sword key was so massive that it created a deep ditch in the valley, killing unknown numbers of devil soldiers in one fell swoop. Ah! A sharp scream resounded in the sky, and a figure fell from the void. Shwa! Wu Patian made a final sword strike and created a void with his might. A massive blood fog surrounded the falling figure. He was merciless with the sword because in his heart he was angry, and this was the only way to vent it. The disciples were excited after witnessing this and went all out. They rushed to exterminate the Bai Majiao followers. The Bai Majiao followers were shocked and did not have the strength to retaliate. All of them were massacred by the angry disciples of Yi Yuan school under the leadership of Wu Patian. After almost half a day, the one-sided massacre finally ended. The Bai Majiao followers had nowhere to hide. Their sage, realm devil expert, who was supposed to guide them, was also dead. In the end, Yi Yuan school completely eradicated the devil's lair. Yi Yuan school's expedition shocked the entire Great Yu state. Although it had to suffer heavy losses, everyone got to know that both sides lost their sage realm experts and made them feel somewhat relieved. After all, the very existence of a sage realm expert had a strategic suppression effect on the entire Great Yu state. However, this was certainly not good news for Yi Yuan school. By this expedition conducted by Yi Yuan school, the Baimoji organization suffered a head-on blow and was exterminated to such an extent that it would never be able to recover from this. The losses suffered by Yi Yuan school were less compared to the devil forces. 1/3 of the disciples of Yi Yuan school were killed and hundreds were injured. Although there were several hundred true disciples in the sect, almost 100 were killed and were severely injured in the battle. Over 1/3 of the elders also lost their lives while protecting the disciples in the battle. Although it did seem like the elders appeared during the end of the fight, it was not true. They were, in fact, fighting the devil forces that had infiltrated the inner parts of the sect. This time, Yi Yuan school suffered heavy losses by losing 1/3 of their nurtured and cultured disciples. However, it couldn't be considered as a miserable loss because this was the last time anyone would dare to attack Yi Yuan school. After all, if they could survive an attack of such huge scale, then could literally survive anything. Yi Yuan school was attacked brutally, but it survived and was not destroyed. Yi Yuan school had been standing tall for thousands of years, and with their hidden techniques and secret strength, who could dare to drown them? This victory of Yi Yuan school would be recorded in the history of Great Yu State. No one thought that Yi Yuan school would fall down so easily, but no one thought that they would come out of it so victoriously either. Yi Yuan school organized a huge memorial service for the fallen and invited many influential figures. A memorial service was conducted specially for the old head. The old head lived for 1,000 years before dying in the most respectable and honorable manner. All the disciples and the influential figures that had come to pay homage were younger and did not know him personally, but they held high regard for the old head. The old head had fought bravely and saved Yi Yuan school from a sage realm devil. Ultimately ending his life in a sitting posture is considered a sacred practice in Buddhism. If the old head had not stopped the specter, then he would have wiped off Yi Yuan school and conquered the entire Great Yu State. On top of a mountain peak that was located in Yi Yuan school's territory, 2 figures were standing tall and comfortably in the spring breeze. Yi Shiwen was looking over the school from the mountain peak. The reconstruction work of Yi Yuan school was in full swing. "Are you planning to go to TMU?" Yi Shiwen asked the young guy who was standing next to him. He was the strongest disciple in the younger generation of Yunqing sect named Jian Wuchen. He had come to pay homage to the old head as a representative from Yunqing. Yi Shiwen looked at him in a somewhat strange manner. One must know that Jian Wuchen was also in complete truth realm like Yi Shiwen. He was also not far from breaking into the half-step legendary realm. Going to Tianmu and having such a cultivation level was not really an issue, although it was indeed said that true disciples could at most become janitor disciples after joining Tianmu. Exceptionally talented and young disciples like Jian Wuchen were bound to become outer disciples at the least. Jian Wuchen earlier belonged to a sword slave clan, but his status had now risen. Yi Shiwen knew about the existence of the so-called sword slaves of Yunqing sect, and how the young and talented disciples were forcefully made to acquire the status of sword slave and were trained intensely to serve the imperial clan. However, making good use of such an opportunity, even as a sword slave and after being trained in the most low-level martial arts, Jian Wuchen still rushed all the way to the top of Yunqing's younger generation and became a legend over there. It could be said that the 8th prince and several other people were in awe after seeing Jian Wuchen's potential. After all, he was the only noteworthy sword genius in the younger generation of Yunqing. Others were just unable to challenge his status. His future prospects were also boundless. Yi Shiwen believed that Jian Wuchen would manage to do well in Tianmu as well. Of course, there used to a connection between him and the 8th prince that had forced him to become Yi Zaiwen's enemy back then, but Yi Shiwen did not hold it against him. Mu Ling had also evaluated him before, saying that Jian Wuchen's sword skills were purer compared to his own. Mu Ling was quite impressed, and that was the reason why he had spared Jian Wuchen's life on the Demon Island. Such a person should definitely be a part of the first batch of Tianmu. Jian Wuchen replied with an indifferent expression on his face. Those youngsters died because of me. I led them to their deaths. Yi Shiwen immediately understood what Jian Wuchen was referring to. The casualties that occurred on the Demon Island had deeply affected him, and he felt responsible for the deaths of his juniors. But now all that is over. It does not matter anymore. It has opened up a path for me, and my way is now the way of the sword. Yi Shiwen kind of understood that Jian Wuchen was also probably going to participate in the assessment. That's right, I am going to participate in Tianmu's assessment. Let's go together. To be continued. Chapter 287, NT, Regular Chapter. Chapter 287. Sets out on a journey. Yi Shiwen was looking at the construction work going on in Yuan School, then shortly decided to embark on a journey to Tianmu. In about a year, the Tianmu's assessment was about to take place in True Martial City. Tianmu was located in True Martial City, which was the first human city to be recorded in the history of Zhen Wujie. It was one of the grand divine cities of Zhen Wujie and didn't belong to any influence. It was governed solely by Tianmu. Within 10 days, they reached Shannan Prefecture, which was located on the bordering region between the Ming Empire and the Southeast region. The Ming Empire shared its border with the Southeast region, which was the longest border that crossed all 10 countries of the Southeast region. The Great Yu State was one of them. Ming Empire was spread massively, covering a vast expanse of land. It was larger than the combined 10 countries of the Southeast region, and this was just one of the several empires located in the southern region. 2 figures entered the city slowly. Although they were not dressed in traditional clothing of Ming Empire, no one bothered to care because Shannan Prefecture was located in the border area of Ming Empire and was always visited by outsiders. One of the 2 men was dressed in black and carrying a blade. The other one was carrying a long sword, and there was an icy cold look in his eyes. These 2 figures belonged to Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen. Yi Shiwen was being followed by a dashing demon beast that had a shining black body. It was none other than the wolf cub, who seemed to have grown up to 1 meter height in the last few months, reaching up till Yi Zaiwen's waist. Gee, there are so many people here. Out of all the races living in the 10,000 worlds, the human race has the highest breeding capacity. They breed like rabbits. The wolf cub could not help but express his admiration. Before he could finish, Yi Shiwen slapped him lightly and said, Stop acting like a country bumpkin. You will make us lose our faces in a foreign land. The population was so much more in Zhanwu, Jia, compared to his past life on the earth. In fact, China was only half the size of the Great Yu State, and Eurasia was only half the size of Ming Empire. Not to mention it was still not the largest empire in this world. The people on the streets were shocked when they saw the wolf cub, not because they had never seen a demon beast walking peacefully in the city, but because they saw a small wolf having a conversation like human beings. It was a well-known fact that it was extremely difficult for the demon beasts to acquire wisdom, let alone acquiring enough wisdom to talk like humans. Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen were looking for a hotel to rest for some time. They still had plenty of time and were not worried. Not far from them, there were several people talking among themselves. TMU opens its doors once in 100 years to recruit experts, and that time has finally arrived. Yes, hey, since our Shannon Prefecture is situated at the border of the Southeast region, every time a large number of experts from the Southeast region pass through here to participate in TMU recruitment. They are the weak ones, the ones who got left out. They're the ones who get directly recruited by the representatives, and the leftovers go to TMU for assessment. They are nothing compared to our experts in the Ming Empire. Only one of our experts is enough to wreak havoc in the Southeast region. Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen were not pleased when they heard this, because they both belonged to the Southeast region. Although the Southeast region was divided into 10 countries, the insult was directed at both of them. Southeast region is a small influence and sends worthless participants in the assessment, especially the experts of their younger generation are mediocre and get wrecked by our experts every time. Yes, the contest between the young experts is very intense, but it is also worth seeing. If it was me and had the opportunity to be at TMU, I would have never missed it. The experts who go to TMU get to assess their own strength and also get a chance to kick some serious asses. TMU is the topmost university in the southern region. The recruitment process is very grueling, and they depend purely on talent and strength. There is no age limit to participate, even if a participant is 100-year-old or 200-year-old. The accumulation of these older experts is profound compared to a 50-year-old participant. Although the accumulation of some comparatively younger experts, let's say under the age of 50 years, who have already stepped into half-step legendary or legendary realm is not profound, they are still better than a 100-year-old expert of the same level. But even this much is not enough to win a seat in TMU. Those experts who are ambitious and want to reach the peak of martial arts, they not only have to beat their peers, but also have to trample the older experts. But the experts who are more than 100 years old are generally in the 3rd or 4th stage of half-step legendary realm. They are very powerful and experienced, and hence there would be few 50 years old or lesser experts who would be at the same level. And even then, they would need to have multiple breakthroughs first in order to defeat the older experts. Under normal circumstances, having multiple breakthroughs in such less time is impossible. Not to mention, there already are countless powerhouses in TMU, increasing the competition many folds afterward. When Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen heard this, their expressions suddenly changed. Yi Shiwen had not expected the assessment to be so tough. Originally, he knew that the road would be difficult to tread, but he had underestimated it. He thought that the representatives would have already picked the worthy ones, like Qi Fifin, and the remaining experts coming to the assessment would not be that skillful, but he was wrong. Yi Shiwen was not much interested in TMU. All he cared about increasing his strength and stepping into the legendary realm by passing various trials. At such a young age, if Yi Shiwen was able to step into the legendary realm, then no matter where he was, this would certify him as a genius and living legend. However, he never considered fighting against much older experts who might be on the 4th or 5th stage of half-step legendary realm. But now he did not have time to think about those who were far above him. This trip to TMU was not going to be easy as he had expected, but he would certainly get to fight with talented young experts around his own age. He might get to experience startling heavenly collisions in the near future. But there was a possibility that things could take a cruel turn. These ambitious young masters would do anything to beat all the peers and establish their prestige in the foreign land. Yi Shiwen was a little alarmed, but mostly calm after he put together all the facts. However, Jian Wuchen was very much excited. He wanted to defeat more and more powerful opponents so that he could prove himself as a true sword master. Hey, this time our Shunen Prefecture's ominous wolf duo are also embarking on a journey to Tiamu. I must warn our fellow brothers from the southeast region that they shouldn't provoke the bloodthirsty ominous wolf duo, otherwise they will witness massacre. Ha ha ha. Anyway, only a few people have come from the southeast region and should consider themselves as terminated already. Ominous wolf? Look, they are from your clan. Yi Shiwen said to the wolf cub jokingly. Humph, they are definitely from some bullshit clan. The wolf cub replied, They are really arrogant. Jian Wuchen said, while his face revealed a slight trace of anger. Being a sword master, there were very few things that affected his composure, and being looked down upon was one of them. Just ignore them. We don't have to lower ourselves to their level. Yi Shiwen replied calmly. Although these people were not weak, almost all of them were at the 5th or 6th stage of Truth Realm, but they were nothing in front of Yi Shiwen. He could crush them all in one fell swoop. Indeed, indeed. The wolf cub yawned and said, They are nothing more than dried bones in burial mound, idiom. Anyways, why hasn't the food been served yet? The wolf cub instantly went back to showing his real, freeloading colors. You all are way too arrogant. Don't you dare cross the line, okay? A person from the back stood up and spoke. Looking at his appearance, it was easy to make out that he was from the southeast region. Your Ming Empire is indeed very powerful, but do you really think that the 10 countries of the southeast region are run by weak lambs? Don't you forget that this is just a prefecture, not a land of geniuses? Your plan of defeating us is nothing more than wishful thinking. Understood? To be continued. Chapter 288. NT. Regular chapter. Chapter 288. Long time no see, Liuero. Well, thank you very much. No, really, this is actually the first time I heard about your southeast region and its so-called glory. At this time, a young guy stepped out from the group of several young men. He stuck out his palm and instantly shoved it against the chest of the other guy from southeast region. The guy from southeast region did not even get a chance to react. He just did not stand a chance in front of his opponent, who was at Truth 8 stage. Bang! The young guy was sent flying across the inn. This palm move was meant to be an instant killer attack and directly punctured his core arteries, killing him right on the spot. Humph! He was a short-sighted person and so full of himself, but look happened to him in the end. I guess he thought he was still in his so-called southeast region? The young man said disdainfully, Chiu Shinji, you have really grown stronger. Gee, why don't you teach these southeastern experts a lesson today? We don't want them wandering around in our territory while bragging about themselves. A young expert said in an instigating manner, You are going too far. A loud shout sounded from the corner of the room. Yi Shiwen turned back and saw a group of 6 southeastern experts. He actually recognized the 2 seemingly leaders of this group, namely Lu Yueru and Xiao Zhen. Yi Shiwen once joined a mercenary group on the Demon Island. Lu Yueru and Xiao Zhen were the leaders of that group. However, Xiao Zhen and Yi Shiwen had a fierce battle later on, after which Yi Shiwen had left the group. Later on, Lu Yueru joined Ji Moon's group and became her subordinate. When Yi Shiwen helped Ji Moon and her girls in fighting with hairy zombies, Ji Moon offered Yi Shiwen to join her group, but he refused. At that time, both Lu Yueru and Ji Moon had apologized to Yi Shiwen, requesting him to forget previous grudges. It seemed like Lu Yueru had chosen to walk down this thorny path. In fact, there was no one who wouldn't want to walk down this thorny road of blood and battle to gain reputation by defeating powerful peers and competing with continent's topmost geniuses. Only the most competent ones got a chance to enter TMU. Xiao Zhen stood up as he was unable to bear the provocation intended by the young experts of Shunan Prefecture. Xiao Tru, don't be impulsive. Lu Yueru frowned and said, I cannot stand these arrogant people. How dare they look down on the 10 countries of the southeast region? Xiao Zhen said furiously, as he was genuinely provoked and wasn't able to bear such an insult. If I don't kill that guy, the hate in my heart will not disappear. Xiao Zhen said. Qiu Xinji sneered while staring at Xiao Zhen, then said, You want to kill me? Utter nonsense. Since you look down upon us, fight me, and I will prove you wrong. Xiao Zhen said in a cold voice and waved his sword. After the Demon Island incident, Xiao Zhen's strength had no small improvement. He was at the 8th stage of Truth Realm right now, which was great, considering his young age. I'll kill you. Qiu Xinji took just a step, and his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot where he was standing, leaving only an afterimage behind. And the very next instant, a dazzling blade light appeared out of nowhere and rushed toward Xiao Zhen. Humph! Xiao Zhen attacked decisively and shot rays of sword light towards the incoming blade light attack. The collision that occurred was destructive and had a severe impact on the inn. The two could not completely go out inside the inn, so they flew outside. They went high in the sky and collided severely. At the same time, Lu Yueru and her group and several other experts followed after them. Even Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen went outside to watch the battle. The collisions between Bladiki and Swordki were causing explosions and terrifying flashes of light, which soon attracted the attention of many people. The long blade in Qiu Xinzi's hands released a monstrous and fierce wolf that jumped forward at a lightning speed. Xiao Zhen hastily protected himself with a barrier of sword light. His whole body was covered in cold sweat because he felt exhausted in merely blocking one attack. Qiu Xinji was not even a top expert of Ming Empire, but it had still been so difficult to deal with him. A serious expression appeared on Xiao Zhen's face, because if he failed to beat the man in front of him, then there was no way he was going to last in Team Yu's assessment. Who are these two? One seems to have arrived from the southeast region. This is not the first time something like this is happening. Every time Team Yu opens its doors, battles like this take place all the time, basically to prove who's better. The other guy is Qiu Xinji, a rare genius of our Shunan Prefecture. Moreover, he is the younger brother of Qiu Longing, one of the 2 members of Ominous Wolf Duo. The spectators were talking among themselves and seemed very experienced. They had seen such battles not once or twice, and most of the times they had witnessed the defeat of southeastern experts. The wolf bites the tiger. Qiu Xinji suddenly congealed a fierce wolf made up of Jinyuan. The wolf roared and rushed towards Xiao Zhen to tear him apart. Xiao Zhen retreated again and was trying to stay away from the wolf while charging up his sword-light attack. Ha ha ha! Is this a so-called southeastern genius? I see nothing but a loser who is about to die. Qiu Xinzi's supporters started laughing and mocking the experts from the southeast region. Jian Wuqing shook his head and said, Xiao Zhen is indeed a talented guy, but he lacks inheritance. Yi Shiwen nodded. There truly was some disparity between the geniuses of the southeastern region and Ming Empire. Although there was amazing talent in the southeastern region, but the experts lacked inheritance heritage that was actually abundant in a great empire like the Ming Empire. This was the reason why even the strongest experts of the Great Yu State, like Wu Patian, was not even an expert of the Age realm. The old head was one of the few sage experts of the Great Yu State who died in battle. But in the Ming Empire, sage experts were not rare. There were several well-known sage experts in the Ming Empire. This gap was clear at a glance. The gap was even bigger when comparing the number of legendary experts. When the gap was so great while comparing high-level experts, it would naturally be even greater while comparing the younger generation. No wonder young geniuses like Xiao Zhen lacked enough inheritance to compete with the geniuses of Ming Empire. In fact, This was why the young experts of the southeast region knew that this was going to be very dangerous for them. They were aware of the fact that they would have to face many strong opponents in the foreign land, but they still dared to embark on the journey because only with such discipline and dedication they would succeed in the future. Yi Shiwen was aware of this, after all. He was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His father was not a top expert, so getting inheritance was out of the question. The only thing that helped Yi Shiwen come so far was the mysterious space. Otherwise, he would be more desperate than others. Boom! Several fierce wolves came out of Qiu Xinzi's blade and surrounded Xiao Zhen from all sides. Xiao Zhen was in a desperate situation right now, but he did not give up. He glared at Qiu Xinji, then shouted, "One more try! I'll gladly help you die, come." Qiu Xinzi's cold smile indicated his killing intention as he commanded the fierce wolves to attack Xiao Zhen at once. Boom! 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 Xiao Zhen's sword started to emit violent thunderbolts. A thunderbolt struck one of the fierce wolves and its body exploded, turning into a bundle of energy and scattered in the atmosphere. However, there was a lot of fierce wolves. His thunder attacks were not enough to stop all wolves. The extent of Zhenyuan used by Qiu Xinji to congeal these fierce wolves was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. After Xiao Zhen managed to somehow get rid of all fierce wolves, suddenly the figure of a person instantly appeared in front of him and shot a massive daoqi at him. Boom! Xiao Zhen's sword managed to deflect the attack, but the sheer force present in the attack was enough to break his sword, and the impact sent him flying across the sky. Streams of blood oozed out of his wounded body as he fell down from the sky. Xiao Zhen! His friends immediately fly up to catch him in midair, but were startled when they saw layer after layer of daoqi coming towards them. Qiu Xinji sneered and said, "You think I will allow you to save him?" Puff! 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 Xiao Zhen's friends were blasted away by the barrage of daoqi attacks. "Stop, you are crossing the line now." Lu Yueru flew up and said, seeing a beauty like her standing in his way, "Qiu Xinzi's eye shone up." He smiled and said, "Listen, girl, I am no tyrant, but I just cannot ignore braggarts. I mean you southeastern experts who think so highly of yourselves. However, you girl, are you also going to TMU? I say, drop the plan. You won't last long if you stay with these losers. But you can come with me if you want. I will take good care of you and give you everything you ever desired." "No thanks, I'm not interested." Lu Yueru replied in a cold voice, "You can follow me. These southeastern losers are not worthy of you." Qiu Xinji laughed and extended his gasified big hand to grasp her. Suddenly, a shrill piercing sound echoed out of the blue. Humph! Jian Wuchen had shot a massive sword key that instantly collided with Qiu Xinzi's big gasified hand. Ah! Qiu Xinzi's big hand was cut down in a blink of an eye. If his hand was not wrapped in Jinyuan, it would have been truncated by now. "Who are you?" Qiu Xinji barely managed to speak while bearing the intense pain in his hand and heart. "How dare you attack me? I see you are angry. Don't you want to kill me now?" Jian Wuchen said calmly, but with a strange look on his face. "You are also an expert from the southeast region." Qiu Xinji said in a disdainful tone, "Shut up. Let your blade do the talk." Jian Wuchen pointed his sword at him and said, Qiu Xinzi's complexion changed because he knew that Jian Wuchen was much stronger than him, though he wasn't too scared of provoking southeastern powerhouses because there were much stronger powerhouses on his side as well. To be continued. Chapter 289. NT. Regular Chapter. Chapter 289. Nighttime assassination attempt. Qiu Xinzi's complexion suddenly changed when he realized that Jian Wuchen was much stronger than him. He also realized his mistake of having provoked a strong man from the southeast region. Indeed, the top figures of Ming Empire were superior to those of the southeast region, but they were not present here to save him. Jian Wuchen flew up slowly with a calm look on his face. At this time, the southeastern experts also recognized Jian Wuchen and Yi Shiwen. They had seen these two on the Demon Island. Of course, two famous geniuses from their homeland had come to their rescue. They would certainly feel proud. Now they could proudly claim that even their southeast region was home to rampant experts. It's him. Lu Yueru never expected to see Yi Shiwen like this. Although she had managed to sort things out with Yi Shiwen with the invention of Ji-Moon, she still never thought that Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen would come to her rescue. Xiao Zhen's complexion also changed when he was saved by the intervention of Jian Wukenov Yi Shiwen. There certainly used to be some hatred between him and Yi Shiwen, but that was long lost in the past. If you think you are skilled, why don't you go fight with Shunan Prefecture's strongest pair? Qiu Xinji somewhat sternly said, Sure, I will kill you first, then look for that pair you talk about. Jian Wuchen replied in an equally stern voice, without a hint of boasting visible in his presence. These were not his ruthless words. It was just the way his mind worked. He wanted to become a sword master and must beat powerful foes to gain the status of the strongest sword master. You! Qiu Xinji's face turned pale because he could tell from Jian Wuchen's tightly locked killing intention that he was not lying. Shua! Qiu Xinji immediately attacked. He already wasn't considering himself an opponent of Jian Wuchen, so how could he possibly let his opponent gain the upper hand? Qiu Xinji released Bladiki almost instantly that transformed into several howling wolves and rushed towards Jian Wuchen. Jian Wuchen smiled as if this attack was not even worth his attention. He just waved his sword once and destroyed all wolves at once. His movements and his sword attack appeared slow to the naked eye, but were incredibly fast in reality. There was no way those wolves could dodge his attack, let alone approach his body. I never thought that there can be a sword master like him in the southeast region. A young expert couldn't help but admit that Jian Wuchen was indeed very strong, far more powerful than Qiu Xinji. Now, you idiots will get to know that summer insects shouldn't talk the language of ice. At this time, one of the remaining teammates of Lu Yueru sneered and said, You called southeastern experts overreaching and thought we cannot have invincible experts? Well, guess what? The truth is that a mere prefecture like yours can never compete with our southeast region. Those young experts in silk, clothes couldn't retaliate because they knew that Jian Wuchen was stronger than their Qiu Xinji, who was the strongest in their group. Before they could get a chance to think what to do next, the scene changed dramatically. Jian Wuchen shot a terrifying swordlight that went across the sky and instantly routed Qiu Xinji's offensive, continuing forward towards him. Puchi! Qiu Xinji's entire right arm was directly cut down by the sword key and fell from the sky, followed by his loud scream. Jian Wuchen looked coldly at Qiu Xinji, then turned away without giving another glance. Such an opponent was basically not worth his time. You will regret it! Qiu Xinji shouted while trying his best to endure the severe pain. Jian Wuchen didn't say anything in reply, just turned around and returned to the side of Yi Shiwen. At this time, those young experts did not dare to wait anymore. They quickly picked up the chopped arm and escaped from there along with Qiu Xinji. They were not stupid and knew full well that now was not the time to take revenge. They must retreat for now and have their family and other formidable people to come forward. They obviously weren't Jian Wuchen's opponents, hence making him mad would not exactly be a good idea. Thanks, you too, for coming to our rescue. Xiao Zhen ignored the old hatred for Yi Shiwen in his heart, bit the bullet, and showed a fair expression of gratitude. You don't need to thank me. This time I did nothing. Yi Shiwen smiled and said without showing any sign of hostility. This allowed Xiao Zhen to feel somewhat relieved, knowing that Yi Shiwen was willing to forget the past. Thanks a lot, both of you. Lu Yueru looked at both Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen and said, But it doesn't seem like they will give up. The path to TMU was very dangerous. Many people lost their lives on this path every time before the assessment. I would like to meet that Qiu Xinzi's ominous wolf brothers and play with them. Shu Nan's strongest pair sounds like formidable foes. I just hope they won't disappoint me. Yi Shiwen smiled as he was planning to defeat all his opponents sooner or later. That was what it meant to enter Teen Mu via competition. Well, in that case, we will leave first. Lu Yueru said although she would also like to stay, but she was not as bold and fearless as Yi Shiwen. What if there was a half-step legendary expert hidden in this city? Lu Yueru and her remaining team members left the scene. Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen went back to the inn and started waiting for the ominous wolf duo to come. Their willingness to fight was being fueled by the fact that the ominous wolf duo was at the top of the food chain around here, in the younger generation of Shunan Prefecture. After Jian Wuchen thoroughly defeated Qiu Xinji, the news about this incident sent entire Shunan Prefecture into chaos. For a long time, no powerhouse from the southeast region had been able to disrespect them like this. Many people wanted to teach Jian Wuchen and Yi Shiwen a lesson, but no one dared to get involved. Gradually, the curtain of the night covered the sky. There was an enchantment hidden within Yi Zaiwen's robe that not just prevented the ongoing conversation from being heard by people outside the room, but also picked up signs of any trouble on the outside. Our journey is going to be difficult. Yi Shiwen said, "These experts of Truth 8th 9th stage are nothing. Let's pick a fight with half-step legendary experts. That should be fun." The wolf cub said, "Just like Great Yu State, the main fighting force of Ming Empire was located in its imperial capital, including sage realm experts. Shunan Prefecture was located in the border region and at most could offer half-step legendary experts as obstacles in their path. However, Yi Shiwen was determined to fight with much more powerful opponents in order to gain experience for his next breakthrough. The path you have taken so far has been paved on the bones of the fallen," Yi Mo said with a sigh. "However, if that was not the case, then you wouldn't have grown so powerful, and that too so fast." Yi Shiwen didn't get a chance to reply as he was interrupted by an enormous coercion falling down from the sky. This coercion was not directed at others, but only on Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen. Half-step legendary. The wolf cub immediately sensed the enemy's level. Right then, Jian Wuchen, who was in the next room, also sensed the enemy's presence and immediately shot a rippling sword key into the sky, directly overturning the roof in the process. Yi Shiwen also flew into the sky and saw the figure of a man, clad in a black robe, flying towards Jian Wuchen. There was a dagger in his hand and seemed to be quenched with some kind of poison, which especially made the dagger to reflect dark rays of light under the moonlight. He was extremely fast, with his physique and movements like a ghost in general, as he instantly arrived in front of Jian Wuchen and attacked with his dagger. The horrifying coercion of half-step legendary realm was firmly suppressing Jian Wuchen, almost making it impossible for him to move. Jian Wuchen roared in the sky and suddenly shot an enormous sword intention that immediately shattered the coercion and freed him. "I don't care what tricks you are using. My sword is enough to render all of them useless." Jian Wuchen rushed towards the half-step legendary assassin and struck with his sword. The assassin was taken aback and did not dare to face Jian Wuchen head-on. Although he was at half-step legendary realm, he majored in the ways of assassination. This enabled him to assassinate even legendary-level experts by making use of perfectly timed sneak attacks. However, that did not mean that he was very strong or something. His only strong trait was the art of effective sneak attack and instant assassination. In a real fight, he wouldn't stand a chance against even a strong expert of complete truth realm like Jian Wuchen. Failing to assassinate Jian Wuchen in time was his biggest mistake, and now that he wanted to escape, Jian Wuchen wouldn't let that happen. And even more frightening was the fact that he could feel a terrifying aura as if tracing his entire being from the sidelines. Although the owner of this aura didn't go into action right away, they seemed all prepared to attack any time now. It was obvious that the assassin had no way to escape from this situation. Thinking of this, the assassin bit the bullet and clashed with Jian Wuchen. He first needed to deal with the sword master in front of him. Only then he might have a chance to run away from the owner of that scary aura. And yes, that's Yi Shiwen he is scared of. Yi Shiwen sneered and locked onto the assassin in midair, using his imposing aura. Since Jian Wuchen had already jumped into the fight, he did not want to intervene. However, he also did not want the assassin to escape, so he used his imposing aura to greatly suppress the assassin's power. A well-planned sneak attack could have killed a legendary expert, but the assassin failed in doing so and also ended up revealing his presence. And the result was that he was on the verge of being killed by an expert of complete truth realm. This was the so-called art of deception, the art of assassination. To be continued. Chapter 290. NT. Regular chapter. Chapter 290. Ominous wolf attacks. Of course, the probability of being an expert of complete truth realm was very low. After all, the half-step legendary realm was not difficult to attain either. Clang! Jian Wuchen issued a terrifying sword light that lit up the sky, suddenly alarming the entire city, but the good news was that no one arrived to intervene or to make a fuss or anything. The only one who probably wanted to cry right now was the owner of the inn. The sword light was flying towards the assassin, and since Yi Shiwen was observing this battle from not far away, Jian Wuchen felt somewhat relieved. At this time, Yi Ziwen's presence was quite reassuring, especially because Jian Wuchen was dealing with an expert of half-step legendary realm. Thanks to that, the assassin was literally cornered, and that too to an extent that he suddenly roared and rushed toward Jian Wuchen like a cornered beast that had lost his calm. Despite being an expert of half-step legendary realm, the assassin was scared of Yi Shiwen. And if he didn't even manage to defeat a young sword master of complete truth realm, then he certainly wouldn't stand a chance against Yi Shiwen. Shwa! The assassin's dagger released a poisonous beam that traveled across the sky. It seemed like a desperate attack that was aimed at Jian Wuchen. Jian Wuchen's face was expressionless, though his eyes were as sharp as a sword. The sword danced in his hand and easily deflected the poisonous beam. Immediately, the strong experts of the city began to talk to each other using soul links. They were discussing the fight going on between Jian Wuchen and the assassin. Is this man really from the southeast region? I never expected to see such a great master from the southeast region, to be honest. His opponent is at half-step legendary realm, but is just an assassin. I don't think this assassin will last long in a face-to-face battle. We must accept the fact that the southeastern region has talented people. If this guy manages to survive after what has done to Qiu Xinji in the coming 100 years, he will certainly become a formidable powerhouse. These soul link conversations certainly didn't bypass Yi Ziwen's radar. Yi Shiwen sneered and didn't seem particularly pleased from all these experts talking stuff about Jian Wuchen and the southeastern region. It was really laughable how much they had underestimated Jian Wuchen's potential. These people were extremely arrogant and had been like this for a long time. Indeed, the Ming Empire was more powerful than the Great Yu State, but that didn't mean that the entire southeastern region would also lie in the same category. It seemed like the domineering attitude of Qiu Xinji and his friends was a result of the contaminated mindset continuing from previous generations. Boom! 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 The two experts continued to clash again and again in the sky. The assassin was fast like a ghost in general, but Jian Wuchen's speed was quickly growing fast perceptibly. Boom! An enormous burst of energy swept off in all direction, cutting a deep dagger wound in his chest almost instantly. His complexion turned green due to the instant poisoning. The assassin was also in a bad shape. Jian Wuchen's sword had cut open a large hole in his abdomen. Both of them staggered a bit, then immediately rushed towards each other. Jian Wuchen waved his sword and issued a sword intention that suddenly transformed into a massive sword light, and went towards his opponent. This attack was lightning fast and arrived right above the assassin's head in a blink of an eye. The spectators held their breaths at the scene. Some of them were in half-step legendary realm and were strong enough to wreak havoc in this city, but even they could feel the insane amount of power contained in Jian Wuchen's attack. They were forced to accept the fact that Jian Wuchen's sword attacks were dangerous and must not be taken lightly. Today, Jian Wuchen used his skills and talent to make several experts envious of him. Boom! The sword light suddenly transformed into a massive double-edged sword right in front of the assassin. Boom! The assassin's hand transformed into a tiger's mouth, and it tried to grab the incoming flying sword. However, the inherent power contained his defense-type attack was not enough to stop Jian Wuchen's offensive. Boom! The assassin was knocked down by the enormous explosion that took place after the collision. His body severely pounded on the ground, making a humanoid-shaped pit in the ground. And at this time, Jian Wuchen arrived right above the assassin and attacked with his sword. Boom! The assassin was directly beheaded by Jian Wuchen. Jian Wuchen had won the fight, but his complexion was deathly pale. His body was drenched with blood, but more importantly, the poison had already spread throughout his body and was affecting his body functions. If he had not been using his own sword ki to defend against the poison, he would be dead by now. Are you all right? It seems you are poisoned. Yi Shiwen asked. I am fine. I can fix this, but I may need to spend some time in closed-door rest. Jian Wuchen said, No problem. If that ominous wolf comes looking for you, I will make him entertain me properly to my heart's content. Yi Shiwen grinned and appeared all ready to fight whenever required. Anyway, the attitude of Qiu Xinji and his clan had already pissed him off. They looked for another in to rest. Jian Wuchen started to take rest and heal himself. Although he was severely injured in the fight, he told Yi Shiwen that he also gained a lot of benefits. Next day, when Yi Shiwen was busy cultivating and exercising his powers in the mysterious space, suddenly a terrifying aura appeared out of nowhere and pressed down. It seemed as if the aura belonged to a beast, making Yi Shiwen feel like he had stepped into a beast's den. Where are those two troublemakers from the southeast region who have a death wish? Come out. A hoarse voice sounded from the sky. There was a hint of beastly roar in this voice. Yi Shiwen saw the figure of a man standing in the sky. He was clad in military clothing, had rough facial features while his face was covered with hair. He had deep green eyes, and as soon as he howled like a wolf, an endless amount of killing intention spread everywhere. Everyone started fleeing from the streets because they were too scared from his beast's aura. Right now, he appeared just like a werewolf bathing in milky moonlight. Who is this man? You don't know who he is? Well, I cannot expect outsiders to know about our Shunan Prefecture's famous ominous wolf duo. This person and the eldest son of our city, lured together, make the ominous wolf duo. This person is named Qiu Wolf. He is the most distinguished disciple of Qiu clan. People say that he was once caught by a wolf demon beast in his childhood, but was saved later on. He was infected back then and has since inherited the beast's traits of demon wolf race. He is not even 50 years old and has still become one of the two top players in the younger generation of Shunan Prefecture. Well, this is called being fortunate by mistake, but why does he appear so angry? An expert from the southeast region has chopped his younger brother's arm. He has come to take revenge. Everyone was trembling with fear. They could not stand this kind of terrible, beastly killing intention. No one could withstand such a killing intention. Boom! An imposing aura exploded from inside the inn, and a figure jumped out. Was it you who hurt my younger brother? Qiu Wolf asked and growled at the same time while stubbornly staring at Yi Shiwen like a wolf. No. Yi Shiwen shook his head. If I had fought with him, he would be dead right now. Yi Shiwen answered in an indifferent voice. You are courting death. Qiu Wolf said in a furious tone. Who do you think you are? Yi Shiwen sneered. Oh, right. How can I forget? You are one of the Shunan Prefecture's idiotic duo. Yi Shiwen laughed loudly and said, Chiu Wolf's complexion changed immediately. After all, since the day he obtained this title, nobody had dared to make fun of him. I will tear you apart with my own hands. Just you watch. Chiu Wolf's imposing aura scattered in all directions and tightly locked onto Yi Shiwen. Tear me apart, you say? I would like you to try. Yi Shiwen stopped laughing, and a cold look flashed in his eyes. His body was instantly enveloped in golden divine clothing, and a violent, godly aura spread in all directions. It seemed as if the true god of the 10,000 worlds had suddenly appeared, and all must grovel in front of him. To be continued.